Hello, everyone. Looks like we're just missing Dorki. Yeah, so I kind of wanted to talk about. So augmentation is like I think like people have been thinking about it all week, but then like today there was like some super crazy bug stuff that they're gonna have to address, which actually brings a lot of things that Blizzard has said in interviews to play, specifically about like them being able to buff the same person is kind of intended for like a weird reason. But I also just after a week of it being out, it's no longer like in PTR. Although I will say that right now it kind of sucks for the TGP and Mythic Plusters, but right now kind of is PTR for augmentation. Like I feel like Blizzard it's very intentional. Hey, what's up, man? I think it's very intentional that it came out in a 0.5 patch. Like they're gonna want half of a patch to tune and figure this thing out before like a raid comes out, for example. But yeah, I kind of want to just get some of your all's opinions on it so far. I made sure to get some people that are, I think, pro augmentation in general. I think Dratnos described himself as an enlightened centrist.
That's me.
I know THD is very against augmentation and all things raid buffs and PI to
Oh yeah,
make
I've seen
sure,
his tweets.
yeah, to make sure that
Holy.
that side is covered as well. I think I'm definitely central right now because there's so many issues with it, but I think I'm pro with it being done right. And I guess at that point, it's more what your faith is in Blizzard. Like I wouldn't have been faithful 2 years ago, but I think all the stuff they've done design wise with like class revamps and stuff recently has been really, really good. So like I have faith that they'll kind of figure it out. And I think if you just make them less good in dungeons, and I guess required is the right word, and specifically can fix their major raid gameplay issues, I think that it'll be really good for the game in general and also just like not super intrusive. But I know people feel totally differently about that. So I kind of want to just go around and hear what you guys think about it so far, and then we'll kind of get into the weeds of what has happened. So Dorky, what's your opinion on the old Augie?
I think the class has been great for the game. I haven't seen a single person that hasn't had fun playing with an Evoker. Also, there are so many players who love playing as a support role. And I mean, from an M plus perspective, I think it's been mostly positive, aside from it being clearly broken.
It's so polarizing. Like I even mentioned this in raid earlier, and I was like, "How do you guys feel about augmentation?" This was like an hour and a half ago, and immediately two people spoke up: THD and Goop. And Goop was like, "I think this is the best thing they've done in the game in a long time," and THD was like, "I'm like about to pull his hair out, like he fucking hates it, right?" So it's like very few people I think are central. It's either like you think this is great or you just hate it. What about you, Twix? You've been doing high keys as augmentation all week, right?
Yeah, I sort of played Devastation and Raid as an ult, and then sort of in some like weekly keys, I guess. And then I just played Augmentation this week and started doing like all 28s and some 29s. And basically, this class is insane. It's insanely fun to play. And I found everyone in my group, which is usually a Fire Mage or Frost Mage and a Shadow Priest pretty much all the time. They're always enjoying it. They can pretty much pay phone and know that I can stop everything if I wanted to. I can give them a bunch of defensives. I can, like for example, the mini boss and last boss. The mini boss right before last boss in halls. Instead of doing this weird outrange thing, I just can make everyone live for like 5 of them in a row.
And to
And
be fair, that's
I feel like
also
it's
partially
really
because
healthy.
the dungeon's overtuned.
Well, yeah, but I feel like that's really good that a support player can enable your DPS to
True.
do DPS better.
But that's a huge problem because even if they nerf their damage effectiveness, the defensive capability in dungeons, because at a certain key level, it's just about just like living a certain mechanic going off or not, that it's almost like the dungeon comp now. We'll get into this more later, but it seems like it really is like tank, healer, support, 2 DPS, which is like, okay, so a third of DPS just like are now waiting, and there's only one spec in the game that can do that. Like if you're looking at timing high keys, even if they nerf the fuck out of the damage, just the 16% HP on those hits alone to the whole group, cheat death, like it's just so insane.
We'll say Augmentation and Raid is a lot worse. Like it's actually polar opposite how unenjoyable it is. I can see myself giving buffs to the wrong players that I don't want, and I know I can optimize it, but coordinating the entire raid to optimize around it is incredibly horrible viewing, and I don't think that should be a part of like the raid gameplay.
Oh yeah. Speaking of raid gameplay, THD, what's your opinion on augmentation?
My opinion on augmentation, it's a pretty simple opinion. I do not enjoy when outside factors affect my character's throughput.
I actually want to ask you something specifically about that. So when I think of PI and why it causes issues, like obviously there's people who like really focus on their damage, but I think so much of PI is actually the gameplay feeling. Like when you get PI, your class feels amazing, and then losing it feels bad. It's like, damn, I wish I almost would have never had it in the first place, because now I just feel like I'm playing a worse character with this much less haste in my cooldowns.
But that's exactly what makes augmentation great, because it's not just one person getting a piece of the pie. Get it, pie? Because
it's like Wind Fury.
It's everyone gets to have fun. Yeah, everyone gets to have fun, and with augmentation or with PI, it's the complete opposite, where only one person gets to have fun.
Yeah, but here's the thing: with augmentation, if you turned off everything, you would not notice it at all.
Yeah, but isn't that better than PI?
I think that's a problem as well. Like augmentation, if you get a buff from augmentation, it should change some way that you play.
See, okay,
yeah, like the only way I know that I'm buffed by augmentation is because I track their debuff on the boss.
Okay, but that's actually really interesting though, because isn't that? Would you rather not feel it from someone, or would you rather be like PI? Because I think.
Well, actually, I don't even agree with that though. Like, there's no way you don't feel it. Well, for two things. Like, one is that like the breath, right? When they have them do the breath, you feel like you have that burst window. It's like doing a boss fight where they have damage amp windows. And I feel like that alone is fun as fuck. And the second thing is, there's been so many clips going around, or like, you know, just people talking about how they're popping off doing like 1,000,000 DPS. Like, I'm sure you guys have seen plenty of those, right? Like, I'm sure a lot of people feel so fucking good whenever they're like, holy hell, I'm popping off here doing 1,000,000 DPS.
Bro, popping off on AoE is one of the best feelings of all time in WoW.
Yeah, exactly. And this just like amplifies that feeling so much.
And two people feel good about that. The person, like the support player, feels good, and the person who is playing with the support player also feels good in the dungeon environment.
I mean, also, not even DPS too. Like when it comes to tanks and healers, I've heard so much positive feedback coming from tanks and healers. They love playing with augmentation.
Well,
like tanks,
broken.
Sure, but I mean, it's also because like it enables their class to actually feel good. Like tanks feel like they can actually do their jobs as a tank, and healers actually feel like they're not playing an under-geared alt.
Before we get into the dungeon stuff, Dratnos, what is your take on Augie?
Yeah, I mean, so it's new, right? And it's definitely fun to play with the new thing, but like it is doing more damage than all of the DPS specs, or like competitive with the best one or two in dungeons, right? And like also bringing, you know, permanent rallying cry or whatever on the group and all this other utility. So like, I mean, of course it's going to feel good to be playing with a spec that's like 1.5 characters, right? That's just that you're getting away with something, right?
True.
Is that going to be fun if it stays like that long term? Probably not, right? People probably wouldn't enjoy if of the 40 specs in the game there was one that was like a hard lock in every group, right? Like that's something where historically whenever that's been true in a season, people have soured on it over time, although sometimes the people that are playing that spec look back at it very fondly, right? You can think about like Fire Mage at the end of BFA, and people are like, oh yeah, that was so fun. But it's like, okay, of course it's fun, right? You're doing twice as much damage as everybody else.
Well, also,
but I feel like we're talking about two different things, right? Like, are we talking about like how balanced augmentation is, or are we just talking about augmentation as a class and a role?
You can't separate those two things though. Like that's True. Not people the same mechanical abilities. If one of them is doing twice as much damage as another, like that, people are just going to find them completely different in terms of how fun they are.
Playing a class and like having it be fluid gameplay and feeling like you matter and feeling like the utility you bring is like you use it at a certain time and it matters is fun. But what is also fun, no question, is like looking at your damage meter and you're fucking owning. You know, like that is true. That has been true forever. That like doing a ton of damage and like AoEing a huge pack is fun when you're doing more damage.
Yeah, and obviously like damage meters not being something you can look at to evaluate augmentation easily has been something talked about, but like even just like, oh, we came in and we timed a 29 and last week we were struggling in a 27 or whatever, like that feeling is a similar sort of one where it's just like, yeah, the power level is a lot of why people are enjoying playing as and with augmentation right now. But the challenge is if they were to nerf it to a point where it was actually fair, where it was like competitive with other specs equally good, would it be a fun experience? Because they would need to either make it do less damage than everything else if it was bringing all this other utility, right? Bringing all this tank and healer utility, or they would need to remove some of that utility if they wanted its damage to still be insane. And in that, like, would people like it if Augmentation was like, oh yeah, I do 70% as much damage as a regular DPS, right? When you factor in the buffs, and I bring these tank benefits and these healer benefits like that. I feel like that would be a lot more marginal for a lot of people. It'd be a lot harder of a choice to bring that kind of spec to a dungeon.
Yeah, well, I mean that's also where I disagree. Like I know we're just talking about damage here, but I really don't feel like it's the damage and being able to time hierarchies that makes Augmentation fun and exciting. Like I honestly think a large part of it is like how much they can do jobs. Like here's something I've been talking about a lot. It's like somewhat sidetracking, but I was talking about how most tank DPS healers, they don't like doing jobs, especially healers, right? Like nobody likes killing explosives. Nobody likes having to like stop shit. DPS just want to do damage. They don't have to worry about kicks. We don't have to like do all these cringe stuff. But having a support, you know, having like a role that can just do these jobs enables the rest of your party to have so much more fun. And like honestly, it just like feels good having the augmentation, even if you're not as necessarily timing hierarchies. I feel like the defensiveness of the class and the utility alone makes up for if they lack DPS, or if you're just doing less DPS in your group with augmentation.
I think Twicks touched on something that was super important. I think there's something really polarizing about that class right now, and that is that, and I guess it's more prevalent in Mythic Plus because Mythic Plus is what you're doing now. I understand a lot of people in the game are like progressing, but like a lot of the like players who are going to give their opinions on Twitter and stuff, like those players, content creators, those people have been done clearing Mythic a while ago. So like you're not doing progression with that for the first time, whereas you are kind of progressing in keys. So it's just more in the spotlight. I think evokers in raid are a huge problem right now. And it's not, I did like a raid comp video thing the other day, and it's not really in regards to that. Like I guess it's possible you could bring like one or two forever. But they seem like all those good gameplay things you're talking about in dungeons don't really exist in raids. I feel like raids, it's really convoluted. I think it's really complicated getting buffs on the right people in a real progression environment with like one is easy, I think, but when you add a second one, I think a lot of people are married to the idea of running like 2 or 3. That is a logistical nightmare. Like if your guild struggles dodging waves on Rashok, imagine trying to like also position properly around like evokers for damage. Like I mean, like it would int your progression, or the evokers are going to have very little value, right? So like I think that's something they need to work out. And then specifically the raid thing today, the thing where like people are figuring out you can run like the buff classes, a couple of classes that scale infinitely with certain mechanics, and you just put all of your buffs on them and they just pop the fuck off. That is like I don't know how they fix that, because if you remember, say what's up, Dratnos?
They need to like make it so the second Ebon is less effective than the first, and the third is less effective than the second. So because it's multiplicative with the other stats that it's giving you, they can make it be the same like flat DPS increase, but it'd have to be a smaller number of stat that the second one gives.
So they actually looked at this and they answered this almost direct question in an interview about this situation. Everyone knew this was going to be a thing. This isn't like new information. I guess it's like you see the big numbers and you're like, a boss died in 20 seconds. Holy fuck. But their answer to this was basically, we could have it be like Zephyr, where you don't benefit from more than one Ebon Might, or it's less effective or something. But we want 2 augmentation evokers to be able to queue in with each other in heroic random dungeon queue and still feel like they can do the content. And that was like the defense for why it is stackable in raid. And I think that is an idea that they're married to, that they need to get unmarried to real fast, because that is like so unbelievably not important. The
thing is, they can keep that idea, but just cap it at 3. They're never gonna have more than 3 in a random heroic dungeon.
Yeah.
3's the soft band-aid.
It is so weird that a fundamental part of Augmentation's rotation is based on like who is getting your buff, and that's just not a thing in M+ at all. And most Augmentation Evokers I know have more fun when that part of their gameplay is removed, right? Like the process of actually identifying and landing your buffs on your targets in raid is not actually fun, but it's weird because it seems like that's like core to the spec, and yet it's just not there in M+, and they're happier for it. It's I don't have an answer for that. It's so weird.
Yeah, in Raid specifically, I feel like they're gonna have to do some changes for sure. It can't go
Well, right now.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Right now, you can just like pay phone, click your buffs, and you'll still do very well. And I feel like the problem we're gonna run into in maybe the distant future or maybe near future, who knows, they will nerf it to a point where it is balanced, and then it's gonna be like a disc priest where it's too good for the best skills in the world, and then it's absolutely terrible for everyone else.
I call this
And you have
the
to play
great problem
perfectly,
of
and your
Yumi.
entire raid has to play around it.
Disc
For it
Priest
to be
is
even
Disc Priest is an
to be even good.
excellent comparison. That is exactly the problem with Disc. Is if they make Disc good for the public, it's just going to be broken for the best players. So like, but that's why it's broken now. At least that's what I said before it came out. Is like it's going to be broken for people who know how to optimize it. Because for it to be good for the casual player, which by the way, the reason this class exists is exclusively for the casual player. I feel like then it's just going to be broken when you super optimize it.
Wait, hold on, I missed it. But why exactly is Shadow Priest broken for this?
Shadow Priest?
Disc was the.
Said disc
Oh,
priest.
disc.
Disc,
Oh,
yeah.
never mind.
Yeah.
Okay, go on.
I mean, Shadow's broken with it too because in a dungeon you just only have one other guy you're gonna give PI to.
I mean, I saw Mavie like trying to super min-max it in Raid. So like, Mavie's usually a healer, right? So he has like ERT with healer cooldowns on it. And then I watched his POV for one of our raids, and he swapped it all to damage cooldowns, and he was like swapping his presence around when like certain people had CDs up or there was an execute or whatever. It wasn't like always on the same people. He was trying to like min-max the fuck out of it. And like there is that level of min-max. Like that could be good in certain scenarios. But most people, like you said, have the most fun with the spec. It's a fucking support class, man. You just want to like just keep your presence up and slam eruption.
Because like that, I mean,
fun-
that's who it's for, right? Is it's for people that play Yuumi in League, right? Like people that are just trying to get into the game and have like a more a little bit more of the roller coaster tracks for their gameplay to be on, right?
THD, how do you feel about Yuumi?
Oh, that is the fucking plague of that game.
Wait, does he even stream anymore? I actually haven't seen him in a while.
That's good. That's a good bit.
I feel like the fun of a support class shouldn't be around optimizing damage or your team's damage. Like you should be able to press your spells and do the most optimal thing. The fun of the support class is like what Dorki said earlier, doing jobs, and you can still do jobs in Raid. Like I'll give a Mythic Plus example and then a Raid example. So for Mythic Plus, I can go into Freehold, Spec, bestow Waystone, and go start the RP and then Waystone back to my team. And then go do it again at the end of the boss. And now the turtle is there by the time we get there and we can pull something into the turtle. Like that is fun. That is a fun, unique interaction. And then in Raid, I can spatial paradox a healer, and now they can trank or him while moving. And then I can rescue someone who's about to die for a rescue shield, or rescue them when they're channeling a void torrent out of a swirly so they can keep doing damage. Like that is a fun min-max
Yeah, all that stuff's fine.
part of the
but
job.
You know what the main problem with it is? They should just do 80% of the damage of a DPS, but then just have a bunch of defensives in their toolkit.
If they did
Not buff other
80%,
people.
yeah. If they did 80% of the damage of a DPS, they would still be insane and would be timing hierarchies right now, right? Because you just have defensive benefits that no one else does. I think that's the main issue. Is they keep saying in interviews, this is a DPS class. It's a DPS class. I think they're really slamming that home because they're trying to curb.
Oh, is that what they said?
They always say this. It's because
Yeah.
they're trying to curb healer dooming, because like healers are just looking for any chance to be like, my role's gone. Like if you look at the two talents that enable off healing for that spec, it is like they will never replace a fucking healer on their own, right? But like that's why they keep hammering home like this is DPS, but I feel like they are kind of getting away from it by treating it like that, because it isn't a DPS. It's a support. If no other DPS in the game can do for your group what that class can do, and that's on purpose. If you look at talent tree things, remember Moonkins complaining about having to pick Solar Beam because of how much damage they lost this expansion?
Yeah.
Remember Havoc Demon Hunters currently can't select Netherwalk ever or Fell Eruption because they lose damage in their spec tree. This class has utility in their spec tree at points in which you would take purely for utility, and they don't hate it. Why? Because they're not a DPS spec. If you were a DPS class, you would fucking hate that. But as a support class, that's just part of what you're doing. Like the threat thing, right? Like if you're pugging keys with a friend who fucking owns and is a class that pulls threat, like Devastation, Arms, Frost, whatever, right? You will take that threat thing every single dungeon you do because you're going to save a death in that dungeon and probably a wipe if your highest damage dealer dies on the pull. And that threat thing means they never pull threat. You would never consider that on a DPS spec because it isn't one. Yep. So like I feel like Blizzard
fucking owns
yeah.
too.
I don't know. And then
I will say,
go ahead.
Everyone runs the wrong talents. They all look at this talent build given to them that has like double living flame, short kick, and then none of them have timelessness or waystone or spatial paradox, like all this utility. They don't have landslide stun. That's literally an uncapped AoE stun for 4 seconds on a 30-second cooldown, pretty much, if you spec into it. And no one takes that because it's not the most optimal damage.
Well, then people...
And I feel like that's the wrong mindset.
That's totally the wrong mindset. Well, also people do... Is it on Wowhead? Because like people do just kind of copy the default build.
Like
the
Evoker Discord too, they tell you to run Vessel because it's more damage. But like there's no way you're not running like Chromatic Essence or the class trinket to give your group a bigger buff.
Okay, in their defense though, so people are Wowhead spec copiers, spec tree copiers, but the class has been out for like 5 days, and like a lot of people don't play PTR or look at their talents. So like I think that's a big part of it. But that does not fully excuse it. This happened in season 1 in Vault, where we randomly looked at the public logs for God, what was that like 4 element boss? I forget its fucking Kurog. Is that right? We looked at logs for Kurog, and the default monk, Windwalker monk, class tree on Wowhead did not have the avoidance thing or the leech thing talented in the class tree. And they said in text under it, if your group doesn't have these, you need to fit them in. But it's not in the thing you press copy on. And we looked, and 60% of the public Mythic Kurog logs after like 3 or 4 weeks didn't have 8% increase healing because it just wasn't the thing you copied from Wowhead. Like that, like people, even if they play the class for a long time, people will just copy that and not actually pay attention to it. But I mean, it is a fucking brand new spec, right?
Yeah, even like there's some things that just enable certain fights to be done differently. Like there's a talent that gives you 10 seconds of CDR on your major ability. It's like 1 proc per minute ish. And if you have enough Aug Evokers, you could literally just like have better damage lineups during certain phases on certain bosses. Like depending on the end boss, you could run that talent and lose something else. But it's just not there, and no one talks about it because the sim doesn't say it's best or whatever. I'm sure like 80% of evokers will never run that talent, maybe even 90 or higher. Don't ever even think about it.
THD, can you kind of give some more like background onto what exactly about the support role external buffs does like negatively to the game? Like I know we talked about it in the past of like classes potentially getting nerfed and stuff like that because of PI. Like are there concerns like that? Like what are the things about it that you really hate?
Well, one, it's really annoying whenever it's very hard to gauge how you are performing whenever there are different things like given to you. There's no way for you to check actually within the game how you are performing unless you go to an external website to check how you are actually performing. And even then, it's not fully accurate.
Yeah, would you be better with that if that got fixed? Like, I think that them making the log hooks accurate are extremely important, not just for my sanity trying to fucking crunch the numbers to run this in the race, because I can tell you right now, that's going to be insanely difficult. Because, like, the best classes to give it to you are kind of guessing.
I mean, the best classes to give it to are just the classes that have pretty much the most damage, because that's just how it works. It's incredibly basic.
Well,
personally, I feel like that is only an issue for like a very minority amount of players. I feel like so many players are way too stupid. Like it's so apparent now that the class is out that people are just dumb as fuck in this game, and they don't understand how to like actually assess logs or details or any meters.
Don't
So,
make
like,
me bring
I
up
don't.
Yumi again. I will fucking.
Oh my god, not Yumi, man. That guy doesn't even stream anymore.
Well, so
But
when you're looking at so I didn't actually think the details thing would be that big of an issue, but then I saw a bunch of stuff on Twitter of like, there actually are just people who have no idea what's going on and they're just going to look at their damage meters and that actually mattered. I don't know if
yeah, all they
Blizzard
see is like big numbers.
So when Blizzard said that they couldn't put it in details, was that like an active choice or was it like this is too complicated and we're not doing that? Cuz I actually think it somehow giving details the same information that logs get if that's possible is would be pretty good for the game, I think. Because it is a reality.
No one
Like people
knows.
look at that.
What their description for was they wanted it to like show that you're buffing other people, but we don't know if that was actually just like the truth or just them.
I
saying
also
something.
kind of wonder
'Cause
how
the hooks can't be
prevalent that
put in.
was. Because like keep in mind, no one's gonna go on Twitter, and it's like Yelp reviews, right? Like no one on Twitter is going to like post up a comment about someone being like, "Oh, we ran a key with an augmentation today and it was great. Thanks everybody." And then the group leaves and it's like, or no one says anything like most of the time. What they're going to post is like someone getting kicked cuz some random fucking idiot doesn't know how an augmentation happens, but I don't know if that's happening in like, 5% of total keys run with an augmentation evoker or like 20, like that's a pretty big difference, or 1%, it could be a few like very specific things. I wonder that's the only other thing with details is like people don't get it, but over time they will, right?
I think that reason
mean,
is they
I
don't want
was-
people to try and track their performance, and they want the support's performance to be like opinion based and not numbers based.
Yeah.
So I was
so, like,
saying, like, people
yeah.
just don't know how to look at details overall. Like how people just look at the damage meters, all they see is like the overall damage, when there are so much more important things than just doing overall damage. People are just not very good at understanding how to do damage effectively.
Well, it's not even understanding. I think there are a large amount of people, and a lot of these people are in top guilds. A lot of these people have very popular opinions on Twitter and are like content creators and stuff that play this game. It's like what Blizzard calls Game 1 and Game 2, right? Game 1 is the game they're making, and Game 2 is like people play this game pretty much exclusively for damage meters, and everything revolves around that. If you are someone who plays the game for that, it's not clearing content. Doesn't mean everyone who's like doing a lot of damage is like this, but there are people who, that is their main goal. And they're not even necessarily, there's an extra level of that where like parsing is your whole personality, but I don't even mean that. I mean, there are people who are reasonable people who, play the game and what is fun for them is doing a ton of damage or doing better or doing well. And I feel like those are the people certainly the most negatively receiving to this, because they just kind of don't want anything else affecting their damage and everyone just is on their own footing. But it seems like the opinion of the rest of the game, which is obviously much, much more people, is that this is good if it's tuned. I don't think anyone is a fan of how good it is right now, right? Like, I don't think there's anyone seeing unholy DKs with evokers killing a boss in 20 seconds or 2 key levels being timed instantly because a new role exists and it has to be in every group. Hopefully no one thinks that's good. Like, that's clearly too strong, right?
Well, I mean, that's also the combination of a bunch of issues.
Oh,
like
Holy
Paladin
Pally's
being broken
broken,
as hell,
yeah.
Fire Mage
Yeah.
being broken as hell.
To be clear, augmentation is not the only busted spec out
It's
there
like
right
a very
now.
minor part of it.
It is in 100 of the top 100 keys this season, which is pretty impressive given that it's been out for 3 days or whatever. But yeah, I mean,
It's also the
that's-
best for a week.
That's the hard part about it, is it is very hard. Like, again, going back to it, it's just very hard to know what the opinion is going to be about people if it were actually balanced, right? Like, it's a lot of potential problems people would have with playing with or as an augmentation evoker goes away if it's just OP and like doing best in slot damage and utility all at the same time, right? So like, when that actually, if they ever actually nerf that down to somewhere where it is equal to other good specs instead of above them, then I feel like there will be a lot of people that will be unhappy about where they land on like what ratio of damage to utility that is.
I also wonder if external buffs are more in the spotlight right now because they're working in conjunction with each other. Like, a take that I feel very strongly about is that I don't think any of the external healing in this expansion would have been nerfed if Enhanced Shadow Priest and Nature's Vigil were not all in the same comp at the same time. I don't think any of those things individually really needed to be nerfed that hard. I think they basically got targeted and nerfed because it happened to be the best comp and be that insane at the same time. I think it's the same with this. Like, I feel like PI currently feels worse and Augmentation feels worse because they're almost like multiplying off of each other.
Well, of course they are, right? If you have the best dungeon comp for as long as Augmentation exists and there's a good PI recipient, and Shadow Priest continues to have its strong AoE, the comp will always be Aug Shadow Priest X. Doesn't matter what the hell it is, as long as the X is a good PI recipient. That does
And then
really
plus,
good AoE.
I don't agree with that. I mean, Shadow Priest was performing really well last season too, but not everyone was playing Shadow Priest. I think the only reason why Shadow Priest is so busted right now is because of how mandatory they are for the current dungeon pool. Like Mass Dispel and Mind Soothe alone make a massive deal. Like even if they removed PI from Shadow Priest, they would still be the most played DPS right now in M+, just because of how mandatory those two utility are. Like last season, it was the same shit. The class did infinite damage last season. The class gave PI, yet everyone was playing Enhancement Shaman instead. Comps were like Rogue, Boomy, Enhancement, and like all these other classes, Fire Mage. Nobody was really playing Shadow Priest that much. It just so happens that this season it's completely
Well,
fucked.
do you think that it feels worse right now? Because, I mean, 10.0.5 and onwards until like last Tuesday has been like the most balanced the game's ever been, as far as like healers you can bring to a key, tanks you can bring to a key, DPS you can bring to a key, way more than usual, right? And then it's like you're getting used to that for like 4 or 5 months, and then it's instantly like there is a comp, and that is the comp.
Dude, why are people trying to correct me? These guys don't even do high keys. Literally, look at the fucking leaderboards right now.
Oh,
goddamn idiots, man.
There's a lot
Look
of...
at the goddamn leaderboards right
Holy.
now. Check season 1. What were the top comps?
Nobody was really playing Shadow Priest that much. These guys don't even do high keys. Dude, why are people trying to correct me? Goddamn idiots, man.
Who the hell are these random ass goddamn chatters, man?
Dude, Dorki's ready to fucking fight.
I mean, look at season 1. Like, if you look at
Fucking
Dragonflight season
idiots.
1 on Radar.io, it's look at how many different specs there are, even in the top, right? Like, there's tanks are a little bit one color, but there's 4 different healers on the front page. I think every single DPS class is, maybe not every single one, but like almost all of them. Compare that to the season 2. It's there's literally one comp.
Yeah.
There's 3 groups that have deviated by 1 spec from the comp on the front page. Like, it's the worst it's ever been right now.
Yeah. I was even wondering if this is like the best comp right now is so much better than the second best, like variation, even more than like when people were playing like Triple Windwalker and Antorus and other comps like that in the past. Like, I wonder just how much better shadow or like double support damage dealer healer tank is than the next best thing.
Might be a separate issue, but the solution might be making Mythic plus 6 or 8 players.
Oh, whoa, that's a fucking take. Cook
If
that up.
support is
Cook
going
it
to
up.
be a continued role,
I actually
new
think that'd
role
be
added
cool,
to the
but-
game.
I mean, how the hell would they do that, though?
Yeah, if Mythic Plus was 8 people, we just play 2 Augmentation Evokers, right? Like,
Holy, that would be sick.
No, okay. First of all, I actually don't know how good in a mythic raid augmentation will be for most people. Like, this is super anecdotal, but like we've killed Sarkareth 5 times this week, like 5 full clears. We played augmentation in some and some in others. Today we were like carrying someone and we had to bring in some undergeared ults because the servers were fucking up, and we played 2 augmentation on our first pull, and they were both in ranged, moving around in P1 on Sark, probably not buffing the right people a lot. And we just swapped one of them to Devastation, and the next pull, the boss was like 3% lower in P1. I think there's a lot of movement and positioning fights where augmentation is going to be huge griefing. Like, if they nerf it for
They
Mythic
were
Plus.
both ogged on the kill.
The last kill we just did?
Yep.
Didn't. Oh, I thought saying it was gonna swap.
Yeah. No, he didn't
Okay.
swap. He
All right,
top
never mind.
damage. as
Super
augmentation.
super anecdotal because it was just wrong. Let's fucking go.
You can pull up the log. He top damage.
Let's see. I'm sure he did. I think also part of this is there's been growing tension from people who are opposed to something like augmentation or just external buffs in general, and it's kind of like a last straw breaking point thing. It's like they've been like, if you've been thinking about PI often and getting upset about it for like a year or two now, you're just like, God, I'm so fucking over this shit, you know? You just don't want it to keep going down this road. It's like we're at a breaking point.
Yeah, I mean, but
right?
that's where it's weird though, because like me personally, I am super anti-PI, right? Like I think PI is extremely bad for the game, but augmentation just doesn't have the same problems that PI has, at least for me. Like for me, the problem with PI is, as I've mentioned before, one person gets PI and it's like, well, one person gets to have fun, but nobody else gets to have fun. But with augmentation, it like provides different types of utility and it's making it fun for your entire party.
Yeah, but you're a tank.
Well, isn't Wind Fury kind of like that? So Wind Fury and PI are, it depends on the classes being given it, but they're within like a couple K of DPS value to the raid normally. But like no one ever says anything about Wind Fury, and PI is always the topic of discussion. And I think the only difference is that one person gets it instead of 4, right?
Yeah.
I think the thing about PI is that it's haste, right? Like you can feel it when you get PI. You can't actually feel.
You can on the classes it's good for. You get
extra.
You get extra resources.
But you can't feel like Ebb and Might. You can only feel by looking at your DPS meter, right? Like, you can feel it as a tank when you got an Augmentation Evoker, but I don't think you can really feel it as a DPS unless you are just looking at details and being like, holy wow, I'm doing so much damage.
For people who really don't like augmentation though, do you honestly think it's more of a gameplay thing or more of a damage meters thing? Like for the people who are...
I'm just not a fan of whenever external sources affect my output. Like I fucking played the game like during Legion when they removed all that shit for a reason. They removed all of that. They literally removed every single raid buff in the game, and the game was just way better because of that. And then BFA, when they added in like all the raid buffs back, they at least put the scrolls in, so it was like, okay, that's okay. And then in Shadowlands they got rid of the scrolls, and it's like, well, this sucks.
Well, we may be headed in a good direction for you then, because historically in WoW they've done this like 3 times where they've like ramped over expansions into like full, every class brings its own thing, and then they blow it all up and they get rid of all of it. They did this in like BC and Wrath, and then they did it again, like you said, Legion into BFA into Shadowlands. Has like Legion was nothing, and then it's ramped from BFA into Shadowlands and Dragonflight. So maybe it's like at that point again where history repeats itself.
I think it's definitely a combination of both people wanting to see how they're actually performing, and also, like you said earlier, you said Breath of the Eons having like a burst window. I don't feel like you play around that. Plus or minus 1 GCD maybe, but the Evoker is playing around you. You are not playing around the Evoker most of the time anyway.
Well, when you say people want to see how well they're doing, you're basically saying the friction is opening up a website and looking at logs, right? Like it's literally just instead of
even on details, it's like,
well, on details it doesn't really. That's what I mean. So like basically you're saying, because you can. Well, okay, I guess the log hooks are kind of fucked right now, but I'm assuming. Let's just assume they can get the log hook shit figured out, which they've acknowledged before the patch even came out that they know what doesn't work and they're trying to fix it. You kind of can see how well you're doing though. So THD for you, is it more of like you're in the middle of a poll and you want to see how well you're doing, but you have no idea? So it's like, it's not, you don't want to wait until after the poll to look at logs. You want to be able to see that on your details at all times.
Well, then there's also the case, right? Like, let's say, I don't know, let's say they bring out a new class, right? Let's say they bring out a new class and I want to log on the PTR, try out the new class on a dummy. I will never be able to actually see how realistically well I'm doing on a dummy, ever. I can literally never do that. Because drums are 15%, and I have 0 raid buffs. I will literally never be able to replicate what I do in a raid, ever, or be even close to it.
I want to add on to this. Even going from like one pull to another on a raid boss can have varying DPS. Maybe your Evoker dropped prescience on you and you didn't get 1 Ebb and Might, or a Shifting Sands. You got really lucky with the Shifting Sands procs that happened to go on you even though they weren't playing around it or something. That's like, before you were able to tell, hey, what did I do different this pull? Why am I doing so much less damage? Or why am I doing way more damage? And now it's like,
it's based on someone else.
Well, it's based on someone else, and I can't really determine if I did something wrong this
Well,
poll
logs would tell you that,
or
right?
not.
But it is just more. It's basically just there's so much more friction in waiting for a log to be uploaded and looking at logs than just looking at details. Really.
98% of players don't know how to look at logs correctly.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So it's more of like, is the game going to continue going down this road? Because you actually mentioned THD like back in Legion, right? So I think there's something interesting about Dragonflight, especially in Season 2, is it's like the opposite of Legion. I think a lot of people are really happy with Dragonflight in general, and Legion is a lot of people's like favorite expansion. The end of Legion was fucking insane. Most of Legion was insane. But, like, the game is trending in the opposite direction, and I don't know if it could be separated as people who like augmentation and people who don't. But I put it on Twitter the other day as like seasonal versus non-seasonal players. Like Legion was like a labor of love for people who played WoW and only played WoW, because they made sure that you had as much content to do ever by just logging in. Most of that was just Titan forging. Obviously, that's how Titan
It's actually
forging works.
really true.
And farming AP. And now the game over the years, especially in Season 2, like Season 1 was even, you kind of just needed to farm very rare loot. But like now that very rare loot isn't really a thing. You're just, the game has never been easier to just pick up and play, and it's much more benefiting the seasonal player. But you're noticing that players who are looking to play WoW all the time, this is THD, you play other games, but like WoW is your game, right? Saying WoW is your game. Those people miss Legion, and they feel like the game isn't as much for them, because I feel like Blizzard is deliberately designing the game for a different group of people. And I'm interested to hear what you guys think about that direction for the game.
Well, that's kind of what we talked about last time, right? Like how this expansion has been a whole lot more just log in and play the game, not really any chores you have to do. I don't know. I feel like Blizzard's got to be going through some like experimental stage just to see exactly how players will receive this over the past, which was like, AP grind, dailies.
Yeah.
Yeah. The process of gearing up a character right now, I think, is probably a little bit, at least start of patch, probably the main gearing process was probably a little faster than it's going to be in future patches. But I don't know. I feel like it's really good to, like, I'm logging in to play World of Warcraft, and like when I'm logging in to play World of Warcraft, it is to actually do the stuff in the game that I like doing, right? Like keys and stuff. I'm not logging in to do my hour-long swoop of Zuldazar and Kultiris and, kill every world quest that's up, because I need to do that every day for the next month so that I'm good for next tier. Like, I don't know. To me, it feels a lot better, but I understand that some people in this call have the opposite take.
Some THDs, you would say?
Some THDs in this call liked, and I
There's
respect
a lot
it, right?
of people like
just,
him, though. Like, there
yeah,
are a
just
lot.
you know,
Yeah, I
wanting
think there's a
to
surprisingly
feel
lot of people.
like because it is a weird feeling of like, I want to play video games, and then it's like, oh, but I don't have keys, or I don't have a group for keys right now. Like, I guess there's not really much reason to log into WoW, right?
Also,
Yeah,
this
some people
is
just
like,
wanna
this
be
is
on the
one
game.
thing, right? Like, if you do incentivize people to log in, even just for a little thing, they will go and do their solo content, and then they will see other people online, and then potentially join their group.
It's like a cascading effect.
Yes.
That's actually exactly
because like a
what
lot of people
Growl
will
used to
log
do.
in recently, and they'll log in, no one's online in their guild, and they just log
Yeah, they
out.
just log off.
Or they
Yep.
go try to farm
Yeah.
rares in Zerlik Caverns, and
there's all the rares are up, no one's there. It's just a waste. There's only one rare that gets killed down there, is because it drops them out.
Yeah, so that, yeah, no, I mean that is part of it. I guess kind of tying it back to the support class too, is if we talked about it earlier, like Blizzard keeps calling it a DPS, it just 100% is a support. It just doesn't operate really like a DPS. It can be best understood by seeing how much damage it's bringing to a group, but it's bringing so much more that it's not really relatable. If they're going to make augmentation a support, and augmentation is going to have this much thing, I feel like part of it that's weird is they introduced a new role in the game, but it's the only role where there's only one spec. So it's just like the only thing that's going to be, it's going to reduce attendance in raids by devastation and preservation, right? Like those raid spots are going to be harder to come by now. They're going to, I mean, who knows how much they'll nerf it by, but augmentation is going to be insane in Mythic Plus for a very long time. I think it would be, in my opinion, I think Dorki disagrees. I think it would be lame if just right now 10.1.5 happens And just for the rest of Mythic Plus in the foreseeable future until they release more support roles, it is tank, healer, augmentation, 2 DPS. I think that's bad. Like, I think it should be... We just got done having the game be really, really balanced in Mythic Plus. I think that is when people were really, really enjoying it. I don't think it should be that required as it is right now.
If you take an augmentation, you should take a DPS hit. You should not be doing the same damage as other DPS. Because it brings too much defensive utility overall, and it's
also easier.
It's also, yes, it's way easier, super defensive, and also it's not going to output its own damage. So it can focus on other things. It cannot do the same damage as other DPS.
Because you'd still bring it. People are like, oh, you should just make it bad, you never bring it. Right now, if augmentation did less damage than whatever the third best DPS spec would be in a key, they would get brought over that person still 100%. Like, it just enables you to do so much more.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically the rogue argument, right? Like, in the past, rogue wasn't always the highest DPS class, yet historically it's been the most popular DPS in M+. And I think that's particularly because of their utility and how much support they bring to the group. I mean, just specific classes in general in M+ are great to play with. Like, boomkins in the past have always been great to play with whenever they had trees and beam and all that stuff, all the good stuff. Soothe, battle res. Whereas the opposite would be like warriors, right? Like, nobody really likes playing with a warrior because they don't really do anything. They're just like damage monkeys in your group.
Yeah. You have rally, which augmentation can do every time they press their personal, so that's fine.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
Yeah. No, I mean, that has... And that's kind of the thing with raid buffs, too. Like, THD kind of brought up the raid buffs thing before. I actually think raid buffs like Mark of the Wild, Mystic Touch, Chaos Brand, I think things like that are actually good for the dungeon thing. Not Lust and stuff like that, but specifically those buffs, because it feels like a perk, right? Like, oh, you want to bring this class? Oh, that's cool. Maybe we don't bring a Havoc Demon Hunter, but like if they do, we gain 5% magic damage, and that's good. Where like in raid, they're required as fuck. Like, I feel like the interaction between dungeon groups and raid buffs is not bad, really. But I feel like in raid, it's... But like, I don't know, when there wasn't raid buffs in raid, you just stacked other things. Like, there's always... You would just stack classes with better utility, and then if they just removed all the utility from the game again, this is just a worse game.
Did they do that in, like, mid-end guilds, raiding guilds too, or...
That's a good question.
Not
People
really.
do copy what the top does, but the thing is like, if they see us play permanently ranged and casters on, on Coven,
for
they
example,
can't do that.
Like, if you stack, like, 5 warlocks in your, X whatever fight, right? Are they gonna be doing that in like some
They would maybe
random...
do like 2.
They're gonna say
maybe
warlock is
3.
way too OP.
They do maybe 3 too. Like,
I mean,
and also the thing is, what that did was it allowed pugs to actually be able to just form extremely quickly because you did not have to wait for a specific class. You would just fucking pick whoever was a good enough applicant. You just pick them and go.
Yeah. So I actually asked them about this.
Specific role or anything.
I asked them about this, and it was, I don't know. Okay, so I mean, I'm a fan. Like, if they got rid of raid buffs, I would like that. Like, I mean, part of what I do in this game, and I find the most fun, is like, treating players and classes like chess pieces, and you have basically 20 things you could play in a raid, and you can choose all 20 of them. Right now, that's not the case. You can choose like 8 or 7, right? Like 13 of them are just straight up decided for you. Realistically, and that means that what I would do in this game and have the most fun doing would be more fun. I just don't know if it actually, because like they keep saying that it's only for Mythic. Like, if you're not doing Mythic, they don't care about like 10-man pugs not having every raid buff, because Heroic should not require all the raid buffs. That's like their exact statement in response to that. And it's like, in Mythic, you should be incentivized to have one of every class just on your roster, which is pretty much the case for almost every class. But then there's just only a few that have no value. Like, how weird... I don't know if you guys saw I like reacted to some patch notes and put a video out about it, but have you guys thought a lot about how now, if augmentation is going to be a thing in raid, just how few spots there are for the classes that don't have something they bring, any utility they bring to a raid group?
Yeah, rip hunters, man.
What's up, THD?
See ya, Hunter. It's nice knowing you, bud.
I think it's less. There's less players that play Ellie Shaman than hunters, like probably 10 times less. But I think they're in even like a worse spot than hunters are. Because like hunters
Yeah, well,
still.
Ellie Shaman can at least respec to enhance.
Here's
True.
here's my thought about hunter, like who has it the worst, is like if you're just in some top 50 world guild, top 100, you have a DK, right? Or if you don't, you're like trying to get one immediately. Like that class is something you need because sometimes you just need them, and because of that, you play them in the raid all the time. If you usually those guilds want or need to have a hunter too, but like I don't know, you could if you don't have an Ellie Shaman, that's just fine. Like you don't even think about that. Like you would.
God damn, that's just fine.
It's true. Like like we didn't have an Ellie Shaman for years, and we were competing at this game at the very highest level, and it just didn't matter.
Yeah,
Like,
who cares?
yeah, I don't know. I think that the game's really weird when it comes to stuff like that, and it's only going to keep going in this direction. How do you guys feel about more support classes? So obviously, if you're anti this support class, you're probably like, fucking stop. I can tell you right now, for all the people saying delete augmentation, so hopefully I'm not breaking any news here that they're just not going to do that. Like, they're not just going to be like, well, it was a good experiment. It's fucking, no. Like, there's enough people that really like it to where that would never be the case. Also, keep survival hunters still a thing, right? So like they don't really care about community outcry about bad spec changes and things. So like, what do they do with that? I think some people have said like, oh, like they can make disc a support class. They could make enhance, and I think they can't. My take is I don't think they can make any current spec into a support class without making a lot of people really fucking mad. Right? Like, imagine you love enhance. You just actually enhance is a really fun melee spec, and just imagine.
Well, but I mean, they kind of did that in the past. Right?
Imagine
With, like,
you love survival,
Hunter
and then they make
yeah,
you
I was about to
melee.
say, and Outlaw.
Yeah, but
Road
that was a
class
big
got,
mistake,
like,
right? In hindsight, I think that's like Survival
is
Hunter
it?
was that a
I
success?
actually don't know.
Bro, old Survival Hunter was fun. Black Arrow Explosive Shot Survival Hunter was very, very fun. That was like a sick
Yeah, but
fucking
why
spec.
didn't they change it back?
Because I don't know, they're just not going to do that. They should, but like, I don't know. Like if you love, I mean, disc is a different animal because it's like super problematic to tune because of the things we talked about earlier. But even like enhance, just imagine like you're an enhanced main and you just log in one Tuesday and your class just doesn't exist anymore and you're just a buff spec and you don't want to do that. Like that's why I don't think they'll ever do that. I think all the specs they're going to bring on as support, if they even do make other ones, is they're just going to be extra specs.
I do think for sure I mean, it would be the best option for both sides if they had more support specs. Because like, if you're against supports, then I mean, obviously, you would rather there be more than just augmentation evokers. So augmentation isn't just fucking filling up that slot completely.
I think if you're against support, you hope that they realize, and this is in their point of view, you hope that they realize that augmentation and support is bad and they don't keep going down this road, right?
But I mean, would they
yeah.
just have augmentation as like the only support ever?
Well, they could nerf it to the point of not being especially good, and then they could also
They'll give it the Yumi treatment, man. They'll just
Yeah,
nerf it to
they-
where it's completely useless.
What is the UV tree? I honestly, what does that even mean? You guys keep saying,
League
but-
players, man.
It's,
Bro,
it's
okay.
when
What
you
does that
stop
mean?
streaming. Yeah.
Yeah, it's that guy.
Oh my. I think
mean, they're
that
both
wouldn't be bad
cats,
for the game though.
so-
Like imagine if augmentation at the highest level isn't worth it, or like support isn't worth it, but like for people who want to play support, it's viable and it works, but it's not like super OP. I still think a lot of people would fucking love playing augmentation. So like I don't think that's the worst take necessarily. I think Blizzard obviously wants to make it so it's viable for everyone, but if that's the fallback where
Is there any in between though, where it's like, you know, maybe not must have, but like, you know, it's still good?
The way that the spec works is it's either broken or it's dog shit. There's no in between.
Well, I mean, you
Yeah,
could make it.
I-
Okay, hear me out. You could make it in raid
Okay.
so that you can't target, and it just goes on random people. your prescience and your Evanmite. That would be a way of like buffing the
Yeah, what
how
about
good it is
Rambler?
on
That
bad
sounds
players
even
and
worse.
nerfing it on good players. I don't know. I mean, like, there's maybe some ways. Also, what they could do is they could shift more of its damage into its own abilities and less into buffing other people.
I thought about that.
We-
I don't know if that matters.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the like. The problem is that if they do that too much, like, it's going to become clear that like they're just going away from the support thing as well. But
I mean, then it's gonna turn to like how all the priests are coping about the PI tax and that they're never doing any damage because they're taxed for having PI. and giving someone else a buff.
Also, I want to make something abundantly clear because I feel like this hasn't been made clear so far. The feedback that Blizzard is going to get about support is this is fucking awesome. When we're having conversations like this, even though we're trying to like make it open to like the whole community, you have to understand that like we as a whole in this call represent an extremely small percentage of the player base's opinions, especially being towards the higher end, and support is made for basically the opposite of people that would be in this call, and those people are gonna fucking love this shit, and that is who Blizzard is designing the game for always, and that is who they're gonna hear the most feedback about. So I don't think support, there's a reason they did this, and I don't think they're getting negative feedback. They're gonna get negative feedback from content creators on Twitter. They're gonna get it from people who, again, as Blizzard would describe, play game 2, but they're not gonna get it in general for sure.
What kind of feedback has there been so far from?
Yeah, but those people are
Game 2?
NPCs.
God damn, THD can't say that.
Civilians.
They're who pay the
I
bills.
met a lot of them in Boston myself.
Yeah, I agree. Like I think that I was saying if they wanted to make it worse or less ubiquitous, but I agree that's not something they're likely to want to do, because yeah, the sentiment seems to be pretty positive about it. So the question is like, what things can they do to, without making it less fun and exciting for, casual players that are having a blast with it? What can they do to make it less toxic for like the Giga top end as well, or like the mid top end?
Oh, Goop, welcome.
I invited Goop in case that he wants to lay into THD.
Bro, chat's already laying into THD, man. They don't like the civilian bit.
Bro, the civilian bit is one of the best bits of all time. It's so good.
There's no word that fits better.
Yeah.
NPC is the other word. That's a good one.
NPC is fucking brutal.
Yeah, NPC is like saying they're like subhuman, basically. Civilian is just civilian is saying that they're just they're just having fun. I mean, most people who play WoW are civilians. I really, it's kind of hard. People are always like, you should get like someone who like plays the game like that to like show up on the podcast and give their takes. But it's like those people aren't even in Twitch chat. Like those like
Well, the thing is,
where do you find them?
Those people don't have takes.
Well, they do. They just don't. They have lives
There's
outside
not
of the
vocal
game
about
and
it.
don't spend their lives tweeting and thinking about it. They just like log in and fucking pop open a couple of brewskis and slam some demons.
Yeah, they don't have takes.
That was me on Diablo 4. Diablo 4, I was a civilian. I was Giga civilian.
I mean,
It's crazy.
there's
I was enjoying
there's
the
Giga
story.
civilian like that, and then there's like half civilian like heroic raiders that they still care about the performance and they get excited when they get a purple log. They're like,
Who would
trying to be
win,
better.
who would win in a parking lot brawl? The terminally online like jobless crowd or the full civilian crowd? Equal amount on both sides. The polar opposite.
Terminal online, because we would optimize a strategy and they would just run out of chickens.
Dude, no, we get just destroyed. There's like 400 of them for every one of us.
No,
you
equal
said
numbers,
equal
equal
amounts.
numbers, equal
Equal
numbers.
numbers? Okay,
Yeah, equal
okay.
numbers.
Yeah, they would get demolished.
THD always says this dumbass shit that he would never lose a fight because if someone tried to fight him, he would like immediately get naked and start screaming, and they wouldn't want to fight him like that.
That's pretty true. I've seen that in YouTube videos.
Well, in middle school, some kid tried dunking me, and then I started yelling like a banshee, and he got fucking terrified, man. Especially when I started biting him. Oh man, he was fucking
What do you
scared.
mean by dunking?
This is normal Florida stuff. That's so good.
Psychological damage.
You know how like whenever you need to like step up to a bear, you just yell? Yep, that's right. I mean, it works against all types of NPCs.
What?
NPCs.
What are you talking about, man? Dude, all I want to see is like a Blasson guild or something next raid, like after we're done progressing and we're watching them progress. I just want to see them like wiping in a very easy phase, trying to like come up with picture perfect like formation positioning to get buffed by dragons. And that's just like, I think so many guilds are gonna int the fuck out of themselves trying to optimize that.
Logistical nightmares.
Yeah, have you guys seen the pictures? The like graphs of
I theorized pictures of my own.
Let me fucking
Okay, I've seen
even-
I've seen you link pictures, but I refuse to believe that any of those are real.
Bro, I was
That's
linked
it's
them
just a
from
bit,
the
right?
Augmentation Discord. maybe it's a
I've
bit.
come up with like
Here you go.
all the evokers are 100 yards away from each other on pole, so you can not buff them and only buff the real DPS, and then you can just waystone in or walk in if you can.
Here, there's that one. There's a couple of other good ones. This one is the huge milker. This one has like it's a very geometric.
That was the 22 augmentation rate right there. That's the milker.
Yeah. Well, the 22 augmentation rate, they didn't really have to try to position, right? Because they just
gave him.
They just gave impressions, yeah.
If they really wanted to optimize, they'd also buff that.
Okay, so here's a good question. So actually, can someone link that in this channel, like just a picture of it, so I can show it on stream?
I fucking love the thumbnail,
dude. How does Blizzard fix that? Like actually, without them ruining their 2 augmentation casuals can queue into a random heroic together and it not be bricked. Like how do they fix that? I don't.
You have to do diminishing returns. Like it doesn't have to be much, but just like the second Ebon Might is giving 90% as much stat as the first, right? The third Ebon Might is giving like 75% as much. The fourth is giving 60% or something like that, right? And it falls off to cancel out the multiplicative nature of getting buffed by multiple. I mean, the problem is because you're getting verse and main stat and crit, right? Like those stats are all multiplying with each other. So if you're getting the full package from like 3 augmentation evokers, the third one is giving much more DPS than the first one if it's the same number. So you have to reduce the number with each one that's on somebody. But I have no idea if they have the tech anywhere close to doing that.
I mean, they were not even optimizing verse in that raid. Verse will just go on the nearest DPS roll, but Aug will count, and you can give verse to another Aug. So they were missing a ton of verse in that raid as well.
I mean, yeah, that's just so fucking ridiculous. I'm just looking at the thing. Just no bugs, just working as intended. I mean, you can't really do that in a lot of like mythic scenarios. But it would, I mean, I don't know, maybe.
You could run like 10 on mythic.
Yeah, you could run
11. 10, maybe 11, and yeah, it's probably enough where you could do something that dumb. And here's the thing, none of them would ever die. They're all immortal.
So I think there's like some legitimate reason to be like, there's a lot happening at once, right? It's not just a bunch of overtuned specs. It's like there's a new role. There's like, is this the direction the game is going, kind of thing. But I think that there is a little bit too big of an overreaction to things being done like this. Like I think there's a reason they're really focusing on reworks and stuff in the middle of the patch rather than at the beginning. I also, buffing and nerfing this game is not as simple as aura buffs. Like if you rework a class like Paladin and you make a lot of their talents better and their talents synergize better, they're getting buffed at such an insane rate just due to synergy of talents than just specific number buffs, that when a class gets reworked like that, which they have been really good at doing that well recently, they're going to be great. Like, they're going to be insanely good. And they're probably going to be super good and then get... Every class that's insane right now that just got reworked or buffed is going to get taken down a peg. Like, for sure. That's going to happen, and I think that's fine that happens in the middle of a 0.5 patch. But a lot of...
Bears getting nerfed?
A lot of the takes I've seen, it almost seems like that, like, they're taking this for what it is. Like, Paladins are just going to be this good forever. And, I mean, the augmentation thing's a real concern because, I don't know, if you nerf augmentation by 15% to make them not the best at all times in dungeons, don't they just kind of suck in raids? Like, really bad? Like, I don't know.
Well, you can nerf
right now,
closest crush mates or whatever.
Thing is, they actually, I don't know if you know, they are buffed in dungeons, like, massively. Like, I think, what is it, like 40% more main set in a dungeon?
It's just anytime they're in a raid, yeah.
I'll link you the thing.
If they're in a party or something, they give like 40% more main set or something.
Okay, so maybe that's the what they
the
tinker.
tuning knob.
Yeah.
Well, number one, that doesn't need to exist.
I mean, if that didn't exist at all, they'd be fucking absolute dog shit, right? Like a 40% nerf, they're like barely topping keys. Like I know it like looks like a lot on details, but like if you nerf that by 40%, they would be pretty sure they'd be trash.
Yeah, but they're playing with 2 specs that don't have proper hook.
True.
Yeah, I actually think in the Shadow Priest Fire Mage Aug is topping damage by a lot right now.
I think it's by 40% though. That's a big number.
Certainly not.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, but this is a I mean, it is a spec that is uniquely easy for them to tune between M+ and Raid without affecting the other one, right?
Yeah,
If
I
they
didn't
can-
actually think about that until
Yeah.
you mentioned it. That actually does give me a bit of hope.
Yeah, I'm also optimistic that like if it's ever just a number problem, this is going to be one of the few specs in the game where they can very easily make it like not screw with Raid and fix M+ or vice versa.
So none of this is super relevant to like anything we care about, but it is part of the game, and unfortunately, this part of the game does often result in buffs and nerfs to classes, and then also we cause buffs and nerfs to them. But how is augmentation in PvP? I can't even.
It's the prop paladin issue in PvP.
What do you mean? It's like it can't die, and
It can't die, and it just makes games go to super late dampening, and they're broken as all hell.
People still
Tro was streaming it a bit the first day it was out, and he was just straight dunking on people. And
well, was he dunking on people, or was he making other people dunk on people?
yes,
How does it like? Do they do more damage?
I'm pretty sure they do more damage in PvP as well. But they also, like I said, they're just prop paladins. They actually...
They have one button that does like a couple 100k, right? Is their buildy uppy spell thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is this the most OP something new being added to the game has ever been?
Ain't no way.
Is it even the most OP thing this patch?
I mean,
Paladin?
looking
Besides,
just
like,
at this patch, man,
besides
look
some
at Fire
Stone
Mage
Age-
right now.
man.
What the hell?
besides Stone Age shit, yes.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, DK is Stone Age. That's like comparing anything in current game to Wrath is insane. So basically, you'd be
Well,
comparing.
does it count like if you count like corruption? Because like Fire Mage getting corruption was like fucking arguably one of the biggest things.
Dude, speaking of mages, of the other things that got changed this patch, bro, that class now has mirror images, greater invis, which is a 60% DR. They have cauterize as a cheat death. On most fights, you will take a talent that makes your ice block off GCD and a 70% DR on a shorter cooldown.
They have 8 personals.
They have infinite mobility. They now have mass barriers.
Altered Mind.
Mass barrier is probably something most easily understood as just being Zephyr, but it's an absorb instead. But I mean, they got that. Holy fuck! That I wonder if we're inching back towards the 4 mages in a raid meta. Not just even by damage, but every class you can bring into a raid that can't die is just like of infinite value.
So I have another
Main
take.
character.
Uh-oh.
They should remove 90% of personals from the game.
Ooh,
There's too many.
That's interesting. Okay.
I disagree. I think that would be like way too homogenized. I think it's.
There's too many personals in the game.
I think the.
Yeah, then it would be like
That's
clearly
so
a healer
boring.
problem.
I
Oh,
think
yeah?
that damage reduction could probably be a little bit more balanced. Although it is more balanced now than it used to be for sure. Like the classes that were at the very bottom are like significantly more tanky. But I don't know. I disagree with that. I think homogenizing the game would be bad. Like for example, like take Final Fantasy for example. Like most classes have the exact same like damage reduction and things like that. I think WoW having classes being better at different things is like.
Yeah,
really
but
good.
the classes had different personals. But now there's just classes with like fucking 7, 8 personals. Like, what the fuck's going on?
Classes being like
well,
2
Mage,
or 3
Mage
classes.
doesn't have anything passive though, right? It's like they have to press all of those things.
Yeah, but
Cheat death
having
is
8
passive.
active personals is not. It's not
Oh,
good.
cheat that's passive, yeah.
Yeah, like having 7 or 8.
I mean,
active
it's way
personals is
better
not good.
than like Warlock.
I mean-
Warlock is passively a tank, and you have a bunch of active buttons. I think that's
You
way
walk
more
into a
egregious.
boss.
I mean, I have 2
and-
active buttons. I don't have anything else. I have 2
Dude,
buttons.
warlocks are not super tanky for the first time ever, and THD's just like fucking remove it all.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, they are super tanky. This is a. I don't know where he got this one from.
Warlock used to be like the most tanky class in the game, and now I'd say they're like 3rd or 4th.
Got this one straight out of the cookbook, but
You think Warlock's tankier than every DPS?
most, yeah.
Well, yeah, most. I would agree with that.
Only ones I'd ever say that are above it are fucking Rep Paladin because that class is built.
No,
by
Rep Paladin's
fucking
better
God
than everyone.
himself.
Yeah.
And then
What about DK?
then DK. That's it. I don't think.
What about
Ooh,
Og?
interesting. I feel like DK has fallen off.
Well, Og doesn't count. That doesn't count.
I would like okay, so like my job in raid is to problem solve and help people stay alive and move around externals and stuff, and I stare at raid frames during progression, and I swear that no one is farther away from dying than an Evoker with Holy Priests in the raid. They're unkillable.
Yeah, well, that goes on to the list of 40 personals for every spec.
Yeah, and yeah. We were
I
talking
think
Combo's even
personals
more
help
OP with
healer
Augmentation
balance
having
as
the
well.
rally too.
Wait, what'd you say, Goop?
I said that the Holy Priest like Evoker combo is even more OP because Augmentation has rally on their scales.
Exactly, yeah.
Oh yeah, that is disgusting.
It is insane. Like Symbol is actually so underrated still. Like I think Symbol is as powerful as Barrier on like 99% of raid fights.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's another one of the differences between like the high end and the low end guilds, right? Like Symbol of Hope, I think, is the biggest, just
that's very true.
hugely
Oh,
OP thing about Holy Priest.
It is the thing that makes Evoker unable to die. Like if you were to ask our guild, Evoker is like, that class is not dying in progression. They cannot die. And then you look at death statistics on Warcraft logs, and they're like topping deaths. It's just the total absolute difference between.
Yeah. And it's actually another one of the reasons you like Hunter kind of sucks in super high end play, right? Is like you're reducing Exil, right? Rogue, you're reducing Crimson Vial, right? Like those are two of the classes that are more in danger of dying because they have bad symbol.
Dude,
abilities.
rogues get bailed out by cheat death so much. If there's a class that is getting sacked by all the paladins in your raid or lay on hands during raid damage, it's like rogue might be number one. They get that shit all the time. That class gets cranked. Paladin's an interesting spot. So do you guys think Paladin has been the most consistently broken Mythic Plus healer over the last couple of years?
Oh yeah, it's one of the OP healers of all time.
I wonder.
If you do Mythic Plus, you should always play a Holy Paladin because there's an 80% chance it's broken.
I wonder where they go with that spec. Because as far as I can tell, they made the gameplay much better. Like it's just a much better designed spec, which is what big part of its power right now.
Well, the talent tree is an interesting one as well because Holy Paladins, I know, are all like, oh my god, my new talent build is so good, but it is a lot more homogenized as well. It's a really weird spot where every time they do a talent rework and they make it so there's like fewer painful choices, like people celebrate that, but I feel like it's moving away from.
I saw a post.
Point of talent trees, right?
Yeah, it was like Holy Pound just has one or two 2-point talents in their entire tree. They just have all these choices, and then there's all these other specs where 2-point talents are blocking so many things that they want.
That's cool. I want that.
Yeah,
I want that
like
for every
everybody
spec.
wants that for their spec is to just get everything they want, but then it's like you're not actually doing
all the
choices,
rework
right?
specs, or most of them, have that happen to them.
So this,
and then all the old specs.
They've been doing this with every patch. They like focus on this. Like I think the first patch, the expansion 10.1.5, they focused on like Arms Warrior and a few other specs. But like it's what do you? I actually did a poll in my stream a couple weeks ago or a couple months ago, where it was like, what would you rather have? Would you rather have your spec tree be basically you only select one set of talents and it's good for everything, single target and AoE, but you don't really have a lot of choice, but obviously any spec like that is going to be great, especially in dungeons? Or would you rather have a spec where you actually have to make a bunch of conscious choices for AoE, single target, utility, but obviously because it's not all in one package, you're going to have to kind of make some choices and lose a little single target to gain AoE and stuff like that. Like which one would you rather get? And it was like straight up 50-50. Like half the chat just wanted to be OP and half the chat just wanted to have interesting choice. And it's interesting to see where Blizzard is going from there, because it seems like it's kind of going down that road for new classes they're reworking.
Also, someone said like all the reworks have been good. Like, clear you haven't looked at the demo rework. So.
Oh, is it bad? I actually haven't paid attention to that. I just
I've
see you're
never
doing
done
good
it either.
damage, but I don't know it's good.
It is called the most useless rework of all time.
In the history books, that's what they say. It's like on a plaque.
Yep, it's just put
What
right
about
there.
Shadow Priest being reworked like 4 times by now or something? Wait, is Shadow Priest in a good spot gameplay wise though? Or is it just good?
I think so.
So personally, because everyone can play the spec at a pretty good level. There's not really much-
Elitist. Goddamn Twicks, one of those guys, huh?
I mean, I heard it was one of the biggest like headache overcomplicated specs in 10.0, and now it's like the polar opposite of that. maybe they took it too far. I haven't.
I mean, there can
messed
be
with
a
it too much
mid-ground.
myself, but I mean, it's good to not have specs be overly complicated. But you're right. They should maybe find a middle ground.
See, that's controversial too, right? Because like I still feel like if you were to ask Shadow Priest when's the most fun that they ever had in the game, almost all of them that played then would tell you it was playing Surrender to Madness on raid fights where you could like game that at the end of a fight. And that was something that was like super challenging, but you didn't necessarily have to play that, I guess, but it was so powerful because it did reward you for the extra difficulty. So like you're saying it's better if they make classes easier, but like don't you think it would be good for the game to actually have some choice like that?
Well, there should definitely be a choice like between the classes of like this one's more complicated and this one's more simple. But I don't think. I mean, I guess with the new talent system, you could, in theory, make a class that can have a more complicated and much easier build that both perform similarly. But
I think that's a good thing too. I'm surprised there isn't
I don't know
more
how
of that.
realistic that goal is to like achieve.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would just have to be like like the whole momentum versus demonic, or there's been many cases of that, right, in the past.
Well, yeah, except now you can kind of see the direction they're going because they took momentum, which was like a spec where they were small, really high power burst windows that you had to play around and pool before you used them and spend during them, and then they turned that entire playstyle into, oh, you just are fell rushing around all the time for no reason and the buff is always up.
Yeah,
Right?
somehow
They
they
do
made
that
it
a
so
lot.
everybody, like people who hate momentum still have to play momentum, and people who liked momentum aren't getting the old momentum
Yeah,
playstyle.
yeah, momentum's been a bit of a
Brutal.
fail there. So Dorky, how do you? So we're seeing Holy Paladins be like super busted right now. Augmentation super busted. Mage is super busted. The other new thing in the comp is Guardian Druid. How good do you think Guardian Druid is compared to like the next best
This
tank?
class is very powerful. Well, actually, so I was actually talking this with some other tanks, right? Like Yips now and some other dudes. And honestly, you can really play whatever tank right now. Like you can do your job as a tank. You do like roughly similar damage. It's just right now a Guardian is way easier than the other tanks to perform well with. Like the next best tank would be Vengeance, right? And Vengeance, that class, bro, during TGP I was losing my fucking mind. Like I'm trying to call kicks, I'm trying to do like stops and shit, and I'm just like staring at nameplates, bouncing all over the place because I'm trying to like refresh my brand. It's storming, so I'm just in the air. I'm like avoiding the swirlies, getting stunned. That shit made me lose my mind. But I swear, one of the biggest differences with playing a tank like Bear is it's just so payphone, and I think that's by far the most OP part about Bear right now.
Hmm. Well, then that's going to be good for you when the actual TGP happens, right? If you swap to Guardian.
I mean, it's good for everyone because like yeah, it's
Well,
like,
but it's
low
especially
on
good for the
cognitive load.
bad players, right? So
Yeah.
They've been doing that with a lot of specs. Like even Rune of Power is making the spec easier kind of thing, where you don't have to go around Rune of Power, and they've been just reworking a lot of specs to make them simpler.
I think Guardian Druid is not going to get nerfed very much. I think that class is less over the other tanks than like Holy Paladin is over the other healers, and Aug is the Aug situation. But
It's also like a raid thing too, right?
They're
Because
due.
like these other classes are broken as hell in raid.
yeah,
whereas, like,
Bear
Guardian's
is
just kinda
hard
whatever.
due in raid. It's been 6 years since it was. If you're speaking purely optimally, you could have played it in all of those raids, obviously, but like on a high level, it being the best tank to play, it's been 6 years. I think every other tank has been played multiple times since the last time it was right to play Guardian.
But also, I think this is how tanks and healers should feel. Because you know how like everyone's been complaining about how healing feels like dog shit in M+. Tanks, well, VDH in particular, aggro is like a major issue, and I don't know, it's just been kind of annoying playing these roles this season. But with these classes, it's been, at least from like what I've been hearing, M+ has been a lot more fun. I actually had a friend that was like, I was talking to yesterday. She was saying how like, oh, healing's actually fun right now, fun as hell. I'm like, are you playing Holy Paladin? Yeah, that's exactly why it's fun right now.
I wonder how many people are still doing Mythic Plus. Like, not the and a patch just happened, but like not the super gamers that like always play every season, But like the people who play seasonally, like you can be a seasonal WoW player and play for 3 weeks or 8 weeks, right? I would still describe both of those as the same thing. I wonder how long, because they basically play until they stop having fun and then they leave. I wonder how long those players played this patch with how fast you got gear and how much that was a part of it. I know we talked about that before, but I just really wonder how much that affected the majority of the community. Seems like Mythic Plus queues are still going hot, right?
This week, it feels like a lot of people are playing. The past few weeks, though, it feels like there's been a lot less. I don't know.
Well, Diablo 2, it's kind of hard to tell. Diablo plus that, yeah.
This week definitely feels like there's been a lot of people playing.
How do you think the TGP is going to go? Like, do you think it's do you think everyone's going to be playing the same comp? Do you think the community has it wrong? I think the community right now is
there's
like...
mage nerfs, man. Oh, it's over.
Yeah, they're only going to be 20% better than every class now instead
Do
of
not
30.
leak anything to this guy.
Well, well, of course not, yeah.
I mean, honestly, it does feel like a lot of people are just playing the same shit. I'm going to be honest. Maybe not. I don't actually know.
I'm telling you, all right. Just play Destro or Af, and you'll be good. Yeah, that'll replace the mage.
You think so, THD? There ain't no way. Ain't
Well,
no
Destro,
one's gonna.
The bigger the pack, the more your cooldown comes up, bud.
Look, all I'm gonna say is there are a lot more classes that are good than people think.
That's always
Just,
true though, because everyone always just focuses on the like very, very top.
Yeah.
All right, you guys have anything else you want to spit about? Anyone mad or
happy
about
I was
something?
gonna say how there was this great point, like when you were talking about how I don't remember what exactly you said, but I was thinking exactly this. WoW players don't like changes, and I think augmentation is like a big one. WoW players in general are like they're super against changes, but I think it's great that Blizzard is trying different things. Blizzard is actually going out of their way and coming up with wild ideas.
I've never thought of that. I'm trying to think in my head right now if I agree, because like WoW players aren't opposed to good changes, right? Like I remember like everyone that was still playing WoW by season 2 of Shadowlands when they made that 0.5 patch that made the Covenant swappable and all that shit. It was like people were happy about that. That was a change. But maybe gaming. I mean, I think it's not changes. It's just that anytime Blizzard announces something, or yeah, like you said, something changes, it's going to be met with overwhelming negativity because that's just what you see on Twitter, what you see on Wowhead comments. There are people who don't even play WoW that to give them entertainment in their life, they sit around waiting to do that. It's sad, but it's true. And that's kind of all you see. So it's like, when you're right, anytime something is changed or announced, it is met with that. But I don't know if the actual player base feels like that. It's really hard to tell.
I remember something in Dragonflight. I can't remember what it was. There was like something really early on. Maybe it was like end of Shadowlands that was like a big change, and people were super against. But we were saying how it's gonna be like okay or a good thing. But I can't remember what it was exactly.
There was
might have been
range
something with
on
like loot
Evoker.
system.
Range on Evoker worked out better than a lot of us thought.
Oh, actually true. Well, they did buff it by...
That's true. They didn't buff Devastation, but yeah, they did buff the...
Well, the main concern was always healing. Like, healing in 25 yards. But healing in 30 yards, the class is built to do that, right? So I feel like that was something that people were like...
I'll tell you, man, if I ever have a Preservation Evoker in my group, I'm not getting healed. They're fake.
Okay.
Yeah, I stand
We're just claiming now. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Those are fake healers. I want
Preservation's fine. Mistweaver's the problem, bro.
I want only holy
Disc
priests
and keys
and
is
holy
terrible.
paladins. Those guys are the real healers. Everyone else is doing fake healing. Every time I'm in their group with them, my health bar does the opposite thing.
Oh yeah, the M+ rotation thing. That was one of the big ones where they like started making different dungeons every season. Wasn't that like one of the things where people were like super against?
Oh yeah, that was actually crazy to me because it seemed like it was Mythic Plus players who were saying that, and it's like, dude, I understand you want all 8 Dragonflight dungeons in season 1 like right away, but there's no way that you're being told for the first time ever every season you're gonna get a brand new dungeon set by any means, and that isn't an amazing thing. Like, I'm just trying to imagine, in our case, imagine you got a new raid every patch. Instead of getting a new raid every patch, you just got the same raid, but it was like a little harder, and they put like affixes on bosses and stuff. Like that'd be fucking trash. Like playing new content just has to be better, and it was met with a lot of negativity. But it seems like that went away pretty fast as soon as the expansion started. Also,
Yeah, I mean,
sorry,
I
go
still
ahead.
see the comments from some people that are like, "Oh, they're just recycling content. Blizzard's so lazy. I can't believe you're celebrating." Like,
Oh, that still happens.
yeah, I get that in chat a lot, but I feel like that's from the people you mentioned that are just watching WoW streams to
Yeah,
shit on WoW.
I think that
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of times, especially as a content creator, you look at your chat, you are forced to look at Twitter, and you just see all this negativity, and it would just surprise a lot of people to know what an unbelievably high percentage of that is coming from people who stopped playing the game a long time ago and still shit on it to validate their decision to quit. It's a very weird thing psychologically, but that is a very... I wish I knew exactly how much, but it is... Here's how you know it's a thing. Because, like, something will be announced, like, fuck, what was this really polarizing thing? It was the, okay, remember when Keystone Master got changed to score instead of
Ooh,
being a
yeah.
15?
Yeah, everyone hated that.
Yeah, like, the Wowhead post was like, you know, oh,
Yeah,
you're going to have
yeah.
to do more dungeons next season. Like, everyone, like, freaked the fuck out.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, that was another
Dude.
big
or
change.
when they changed most recently, there was this Wowhead post about how they made it so less tiers dropping from the bosses and more good items.
Oh,
and,
yeah,
like,
that's in there.
comments in that post when it's just clearly purely good that's happened.
Exactly. If you played the game,
Yeah.
it would be impossible for you to read that and think that that is bad, right? So you know that everyone who's seeing is just like, oh no. But like, and then what my point is with the score is it came out, and there wasn't like some collective like, oh man, we played it and it was actually good. There wasn't that because everyone that was complaining about it did not log into the patch to play it. And that's like the weirdest thing with WoW is that so much of the complaints are from people who aren't playing it, so you don't even see the other side. It's so weird. Are other
I mean,
games like this? League probably.
Another recent example is just like when that guy wiped the hardcore classic guild, and there were screenshots that came out of like they don't play retail because it's too easy. All the add-ons playing the game for you. You pug mythic on week 3, full clear it.
Oh
They
yeah.
just have
yeah.
no idea what the game is, but they still voice their complaints.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But that's part of what I mean by, like, you know, people just like don't like changes. They want their game to be how it's always been.
Yeah, but the games like that die. Like it's
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
very niche.
Well-
It's a very
The-
niche audience that wants something like that.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
classic WoWs would be the opposite.
Not to
example,
say
but
that
yeah,
the
for the
games
most part, yeah.
Sometimes don't make bad changes. They do, but like, I don't know. The game has just kind of gotten a lot better over time, and there is like nostalgia, and there is value in the game. I actually still think like the most fun I ever had was in MoP, but I don't know if it's true if like they released MoP right now if I would actually just like the game better than I currently do. I think there's a lot of things about current WoW that are much better than there was back then. I don't think there'd be enough to do, for example, would be one thing. So that is games age and change, but that's like over the long term. Even in the short term, yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe the thing is, Dorki, is I just don't know how many people hate change that actually play WoW versus just scream about it online. I don't think I'll
Yeah,
ever know.
That's also true. Another big one too was the +20 change when +20 started giving better loot.
Oh, dude, yeah, that
I remember that was
yeah.
like strictly
It was
positive. People
objectively
were
good.
so mad about it.
it was like you basically, if you still wanted the same eye level that it gave you last expansion, I think you had to do a 16 instead of a 15, but they basically just added eye level for Mythic Plus players on top of that. It was a universal dub for Mythic Plusers, and people, I guess, didn't understand it or just wanted to complain, and they were just like, this is fucking, I have to do 20s now? Fuck.
Well, now 16s in the vault. You can upgrade with the myth track and get to 447.
Yep. Oh, so yeah, so that kind of, but even immediately though, it's like, doesn't it kind of make sense in RPGs that you still get the same gear for a 15 as you got last expansion, but if you are good enough to do something higher than that, you get rewards that scale with that difficulty. That is by the book RPG rewards progression system, right? So it's just good. Like people saw that and they were just had a really negative reaction.
Well, except if you're doing Lilith and she doesn't even drop anything.
That's a very good point. Yeah, that game has a, man, I've been dude, it's so crazy to me. This, again, total topic shift, but I know at least 3 people here play D4, 4 people, that the amount of people that have been coming out with videos recently who just don't understand what an ARPG is. Like, ARPGs, not every game needs to be something you play like all year round. In fact, I think ARPGs and Diablo specifically, even Diablo 3 seasons, for the last 10 years have just been a banger weekend or a week with your boys, and then you just stop playing for another 3 months, and then you do it again. And that's like an excellent thing to weave in with every other game you play. And there's all these people like after playing hundreds of hours of like base D4, and they're just like, bro, this game has nothing to do. What the fuck? It's like, dude, just log off till the season and then you'll have fun again.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just like ARPG is super niche, and like remember how we were talking about last time how there's like so many normies that play this game now. I think there are just like so many people who just are playing a game that they're not used to, all because it's been like hyped as fuck, super marketed.
Yeah, a ton of normies. I mean, dude, I don't know. Yeah. I watched a YouTube video yesterday with 1 million views on it from a guy who did not make it past level 48 and said the game wasn't hard enough. And like, I'm 100% serious. That happened. So like that, and then the comments were mostly agreeing with them. Like it's a fucking hellhole, man. It makes no sense.
I'm telling you, there are a crazy amount of normies that don't normally play these types of games.
I mean, I have a simple solution to that. You don't listen to NPCs.
Yeah, but that's like most of the people buying your game.
Correct.
Yeah. They'll play it for a week.
Yeah, because I mean, like, you have
but
to
then they won't play it ever again.
Yeah,
that's
but
why
like, if you compare it to PoE 2, PoE 2 markets to, you know, an ARPG crowd, whereas Diablo 4 was hard marketing just to people in general.
PoE is trying to get THD to play their game. Diablo is trying to get someone you've never heard, fucking Fartmaster69, who like logs in 2 days a week and
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like that's totally different markets. God damn, Goop. He's probably reading chat.
What happened?
Goop just ripped.
Yeah, well, Goop can't skip my dialogue because guess what? I'm not an NPC. He is.
You think
That's
Goop's
why he's typing in chat?
You think
That's
Goop,
why he's typing in chat and I'm talking on voice.
Bro, you think Goop's an NPC because he disagrees with you? Come on, man.
Fucking DHD.
Goop is a filthy simp player, though. He likes to buff his boys.
I wonder how many people actually comment on Wowhead posts. Do a poll.
There's a lot of the same people. There's a couple of bangers. I don't know if you guys have ever seen Tomrus in all caps, TOMRUS.
It's like a coalition of 50 people.
He's in every. Yeah, it's actually like the same 50 people that are like they are given life by being mad at Blizzard and WoW. Dude, I do think that though. I know not everyone is like a seasonal game player, but I swear the people with the most unhealthy relationships with games and the people who are the least happy that play games are the people who try to have one singular game entertain them all year round. It's just kind of psycho in 2023. You're just going to hate the game and be bored.
Yeah, but that was the thing in the past, though, right? Like that's why.
That's what WoW. Well, from 2005 to 2010, WoW was the best game in the world by far. Like nothing else was even remotely close. So that's what you did, right? And that's kind of what people have always done. But now like games are so specialized and niche and like ARPGs, right? They're not trying to get you all year round. They're trying to get you for a weekend 2 or 3 times a year. Like it's the games outside of WoW have gotten so much better since then.
Dude, that's a take. Do you guys think gaming is better than ever before, or has there been much better times of gaming in history?
Like 2012, 2013 was the golden age.
Weren't you like 8 years old?
Yeah, I played them when I was like 12, so you know.
That's the answer. Everybody's gonna answer with whatever year when they were 12. I don't know.
There was discourse on Twitter recently where it was like some COD only player doesn't play any other games. Like, bro, gaming's never been in a worse spot. And then like he was getting quote retweeted to hell. Like, look at all these fucking insane games that have come out in the last like 2 to 3 years.
I don't get it though. Like, can't we just play the old games? Like,
you get bored of it. You want new games.
You can't go back to being 12 and playing those games, though, right?
Yeah,
like,
that's the reality of it. Yeah, like I think it's just the time period that people.
Yeah, so much of it isn't the game you were playing; it's what your life was like when you were playing those games.
Yeah, I wish I was 12 again. Holy.
Do you really, bro? Being 12 low-key sucked though. You didn't even know what money was. You couldn't fucking go out on your own. You just like got fed by your. Actually, wait, it's kind of lit. You like stayed at home.
So your guys' life has changed in the last.
Yeah, hang on. This just sounds like THD's life.
What are you guys talking about?
Dude, I was actually everything I was
Crazy
saying
talk.
made no sense because all of that sounds insanely good. You just
Yeah,
like
I mean, I sit at home all day and my parents feed me. Yep, you're right.
yeah, if you are still in your 20s able to live with your parents and game
It's a
all day,
blessing.
you are fucking living the only downside is you have usually really biased takes that no one else can relate to, but like the actual like living conditions, if you don't hate it, like I mean I lived with my parents in my 20s for a bit and that I had to get the fuck out of there for sure.
I mean, it's chill. Like, when was my flight back here home? Yeah, I haven't left the house since then, so it's been
you haven't
great.
left the house since the race ended?
Well, of course not. Why the fuck would I leave the house? What the fuck could be out there?
That's kind of base.
Dude, sometimes all of
There's
TG's
just
takes
fucking.
make so
You're
much
just
sense.
gonna go over to the cashier.
Just a bunch of
boom,
NPCs.
Another fucking NPC.
Just an
Right
NPC.
fucking there.
That's true.
Okay,
man.
the
Like, do you
people
really
in
wanna talk
Boston
to
were
those people?
NPCs though. The people we saw in between the hotel and the venue were actually the same people every day. No one was out there shopping in Foxborough. Those people were not real, like the airplane video. Who would win in a fight? People who go outside and touch grass, or the THDs of the world who never see grass?
I mean, THD could cause some psychological damage.
Yeah, THD could like ruin someone's life.
The thing with the grass. Here's the thing with the grass. The grass people, right? You know
Grass
what they
people.
do because you have videos of them. They don't have videos of me. They don't know what the fuck I do in my home.
Well,
They can't
God, that is
fucking
ominous.
analyze my fucking way of life. So
Yeah, but,
they'll
like, why
have
would
no
that matter?
idea how I'll attack them.
Yeah, all you need is like some 40-year-old dad that's a plumber and you just got old man strength.
They expect
He's
me to
fucking
go
beat
out.
the shit out of you.
I mean, they expect me to play fair. Oh hell no. Yeah, no, I'll play dirty.
You
I'll
shoot with
come.
a baseball bat?
Well, what do you think? Well, I'll do anything, man. If there's like a sewer behind them at the duel, it won't be like a Wild West fucking pistol shot. I'll come up from the sewer behind them and drag them in, and then close the sewer.
Poison damage. Poison damage.
Yep, that's right.
bro, you're not gonna come out of this sewer, man.
Peachy seems like he would swim in the sewer to win a fight.
Yeah, maybe. All right, well, this has gone off the rails. This has been a good a good conversation. Anyone else have any take about WoW they want to spit about? Again, you got to really get off your chest. Or are you guys good?
Reworked his priest.
Remove raid buffs. Amen.
Oh, I have one actually. Do you remember? I don't forget who's it might have been my interview. Someone asked them about the like private auras shit, and they basically were like, "Yeah, we like the list week auras." How did you guys like playing with the list week auras on progression? Like, did you enjoy that?
You talking about specifically Nefarian?
Yeah.
Bro, that shit was dog water. Holy,
That
how
was
can
terrible.
anyone like that?
Yeah.
So I didn't play with it on
It's-
progression, but I'll tell you, it's the worst thing I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, I didn't
How
play
could
with on
anyone
progression
like
either,
that?
but
What
it's
the hell?
terrible right now.
Like I think they were basically like, yeah, well, when you do a list, it seems like it's kind of organic, but we want to like nuke those map week auras or whatever is basically what they said. Which I mean, first of all, I'm hard down with them.
You
nuking.
can't nuke.
By the way, I'm down with the private aura shit if they can do it properly and there's actually mechanics that it makes sense for, right? Like private auras were just the worst thing to add to specifically Neltharian's heart, right? Where it would be
Yeah,
good
the
to
funny
add
part
to
was,
mechanics.
it actually worked
Isn't
with
it-
the heart until they made it not LOS in 5.
Isn't it impossible to nuke map weak ores? The weak ore is literally just
Looking at the
5
map.
lines drawn and then putting a number
Well,
where the corners are.
The
No,
one that like
it's,
anchors
it
it to your
uses,
minimap, they could do though. They
It
could
uses
break
the
that.
Shift M thing.
Yeah.
Oh, that one? I don't use that. I just use the,
If they want,
Well,
if,
the
like,
one
one
with
that
lines
just puts a-
drawn.
yeah, if it just puts an image up on your screen,
Oh,
they
well,
can't
the image. No.
break that. Yeah.
Yeah, they can't break. Yeah, man, that stuff. I would rather them just not make mechanics that require. Like, you can make hard bosses that don't require stuff like that. Because, like, just as much as you say the private auras thing was a disaster on Neltharion, which it was, if you truly did that fight without weak auras, you YOLO'd the OG Volcanic Hearts, and you had to find your spot in the last phase without a map, that would have been fucking tragic. Like, I don't know, like that, you would have just wiped so many times to just the most annoying thing. You would just go to your spot and look at your raid frames and hope enough people lived. I don't know.
The last phase is fine. It's kind of like Rygolon. if you just tank it in the right spot and you get mostly the same portal spots.
Yeah, I
can
mean, on
sort of assign it.
progression, my guild didn't use a map for that because we like the.
How
We
did
still don't use
how
it.
did progression go? Did it like?
Well, we had everybody had a second monitor and we had our raid plan open and we opened our books to
Yup.
page
Yeah.
number.
Oh,
That's-
yeah.
Isn't that just as
It
bad
is
as a
the
map
same
week
thing with
aura?
extra
It's the
stats.
same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
like, yeah, that is weird.
But it's just like my point is that the weak aura isn't the problem. It's the like
mechanic.
map-based solution to it or whatever.
Oh, another thing. They randomly announced that they're putting a ping system in the game. I think this is.
I can't wait. I can't wait.
I think this is like one of the best things they could add to the game.
Dude,
And-
I'm surprised there's so much negativity about it.
Oh, I can get into that in a second because I think I know why, and I think we just talked about it. But
Well, I've already set up the grand plan for this one.
bro, it is so. I think this might be like the best thing to add to PvE in the longest time. Like it's up there with like like it's up there with like the fucking talent tree rework. Like I think this is gonna like you can ping your kick target in a pug. If you wanted, if two people are going to the same spot with a spread out mechanic, they can both each ping where they're going, and that's solved faster. If a tank is like pulling some mobs and you don't know if you have to wait to DPS because they're grouping them, while the tank is going into the halls of Valor or Hellway, they can just put down the ping of where the mobs are going, and you know instantly. The amount of non-verbal communication it adds is just fucking insane. And you mentioned the negativity, like. The people, this was a real negative comment I saw, which I don't even understand. They're like, why add this to the game? You already have world markers. And I cannot possibly fathom how dumb as fuck it is to say or think that. Like, there is no way.
I guess you just don't understand what it is.
They don't play WoW. And if they don't play WoW, why are you constantly talking about WoW?
No, I think it's actually, it would probably be more like they don't play MOBAs.
They don't
right?
play
Like,
other
Well,
games. That's what that was.
Yeah, I mean, I think
They
you know,
only
before a
play
feature
WoW,
exists,
probably.
they're just imagining it, right? And they're not actually understanding the implications of it. Of
Yeah.
what things we actually
Those
do,
guys
right?
never played fucking Lost Ark.
Bro,
Yeah.
True.
that shit is so good that I honestly feel like part of what I do, part of what a few of us do on stream is like, you know, I don't know, you kind of think of like cool things that could be added to WoW, or you constantly are there to critique either positively or negatively what they're doing. And I've never even thought of adding a ping system, and it's like the best fucking idea ever. And I guess I'm just like a dumbass for not. I didn't even think it was an option. I didn't think it was an option to get a ping system in this game for some reason, but it's like the fucking best idea ever.
Were you surprised?
Even going back,
They said that they were gonna put one in like a while back.
I don't remember that.
They actually said like they might like put in like a ping system or something in like 10.1 or 10.1.5.
yeah, they said that in an interview somewhere.
That was like a super long interview ago, like at the start of the expansion.
I don't remember that either.
But even going back to like Neltharion, you could YOLO those bombs with the ping system. Everyone gets a bomb. Everyone who got a bomb just pings where they want to go,
Yep.
and if there's an overlap,
And you can
Then
even spam
someone-
ping. You can just spam ping and figure it out. And then once you see all 5 pings in 5 different spots, you know that people are at least heading in the right direction. And then people are like, why add pings? You can already ping on the mini map.
oh my god, bro. nah.
I just
Minimap pings are terrible.
Why do we need letters? We already have, you know.
The minimap ping.
I
can
need-
only have one
I
ping active
need
at
a
time,
filter. I need
you
a
know?
filter for my sanity, and everyone else needs to get this too. And if you like aren't like currently playing WoW or have not played it recently, like retail WoW, like your opinions just get filtered out, like they don't exist. Because that I promise you, your life would make so much more sense if you just didn't see that shit. Because you never know. And I guess the other thing was toxic. Like, oh, people can ping your dead body if you fuck up. My immediate thought to that was, if someone is going to be toxic to you or to anyone,
They're gonna be toxic anyways. Yeah.
It's gonna happen anyway.
they're gonna get at you in chat. They're gonna, if you're in voice, they're gonna go at you. They're gonna like kick you from the group. Like that there's already an infinite amount of ways to do that. Like someone spam pinging your body is the least of your concern. And even if it is, just fucking ignore them and you probably won't see their pings. Like, I don't know. It's just,
I think it's just people get annoyed easily by that. Like, there's something that just breaks in their mind, and they just get like, you know, filled with anger when they just get pinged at, instead of just like someone talking shit in chat.
actually true.
It's like the
If you
Overwatch
talk,
thing where
if you
you're
talk
just
shit,
that-
you have like some idea of like what they're saying, but like
Yeah,
just a
but when they're
random
just pinging
ping,
your dead body
like,
or something,
yeah,
that,
like if
you know,
something goes a little bit
pisses some
wrong
people
and then
off.
someone
No.
question mark
They're
pings
pinging
me,
your
I'm
body.
just like, bro, what the fuck is your problem?
Oh yeah,
That's why I love that,
it
bro.
is
I
it is a
love that
higher
so
it is a
much.
higher level of being mad for sure. You like you
Yeah.
just you hear that ping and it's on your body.
It's like,
and
yeah,
you're
ain't no way this guy
fucking
just
mad.
fucking pinged me.
I mean, people just put a question mark in chat if you die anyway, so.
Oh yeah, I have a weak aura that does that.
Yeah.
People said it will be annoying in pugs, but in core groups it'll be dope. I actually think it enhances the pug experience more than anything else. It's going to make the pug not in comms experience infinitely better than it currently is.
Yep.
So it's like a wheel. You can like choose whether it's like, you know, a warning thing or a movement thing, but it's also you can individually bind them. And when they data mined it, again, it's not complete yet, but you can do like 4 pings on the ground, but there's a 5th ping where you can ping an enemy. So like imagine just as a pug right now, you're walking up to a group and it's
I mean, if you want, you can go log into PTR and test it.
Oh, yeah, but like you can commonplace, like it'll be commonplace to just ping the caster you are kicking, and then that's just nonverbal communication. GG, it's over. Think about the amount of kicks that won't be missed in Mythic Plus with just people at least knowing what they're supposed to kick, regardless of whether they'll do it or not.
The only problem is I'm already running out of binds, and now I need a new bind.
I slammed that shit on caps lock. Easiest bind in my life.
I think you don't want to bind all 4. I think the
you
one
just bind the wheel.
you just yeah, but the wheel's like a little slower.
Nah.
I think the wheel's actually
Yeah.
trash. I think you want to bind 2 things.
man.
You want to bind the thing that you're pinging to kick, and then you want to bind 1 ground marker. Like I think the community will probably just pick 1 ground marker, and that will always mean the same thing. Like it doesn't really make sense to add 4 binds, you know?
Nah, you just rip the wheel, man. If you
I mean,
played
it's really
if,
easy.
if you played the games long enough that I used the wheel, you just fucking rip
Yeah,
the wheel.
all you need is a decade of experience in League of Legends, like some of us here have, and then it's just second nature to ping.
Yeah, and then I mean, in Lost Ark used the wheel too, so we were just oh fuck it, more wheel.
Dude, the ping system in Lost Ark was actually so good.
Yeah, it's the same one as
It
League.
was so useful.
It's the same one as League. It's a
I mean, they
fucking
added
wheel.
pings in Overwatch, and it's fine.
So pings and like
The only thing is,
kind of are good for every game, right? Like pinging in Apex, pinging
Yeah.
in like every game genre, a good ping system just makes the game better.
the only thing that's annoying in Overwatch is when someone's just spamming "I need healing" and they're fucking line of sighting all the healers and then back the lines.
Dude,
I
I-
mean,
that
I also,
bad.
why can't they just have like emotes in game that are like very expressive? Like, you know, like one that makes your character go like kick this or something like that, or you know, dodge or frontal, just like something that makes your character express something really clearly, so that people could be able to communicate in pugs, especially as like a tank. Like, imagine if you just had like something that just popped up on your head, announcing that there's like a frontal on you at the moment.
You mean the Lost
There's
Ark
too many
emote
frontals
system?
for that.
I mean, that is like a solution to like the overuse of weak auras in the game, right? Is they could just add
Yeah,
more tools
exactly.
like that to the game.
Yeah.
Because like weak auras kind of already can handle that kind of stuff, but like I think a lot of people don't like that.
Yeah, but I mean,
It-
also
it's really exhausting to just like, okay, some new content came out, now let's make weak auras for everything. You know?
The only thing I'm a little concerned about with the ping system is, so I don't know if you guys pay attention to Final Fantasy very closely or know of like some of the lore in that game. You can't place world markers in combat in Final Fantasy, or I don't know if you can now. You couldn't for years. And the reason why is there is like this outside the game thing called like Paisley Park or something. And what it did was like every time a new mechanic came out, it would automatically replace all the markers in the spots where people were supposed to go. And it was like made bosses like turbo easy. So they got rid of it. I wonder if there's like some weak aura integration with ping system that like pings very specific locations from like the raid leader aura, and it like pings where people are supposed to go with stuff. And like I think that could be like really detrimental, but I mean you could probably just make that not exist because
Yeah.
like the thing with Final Fantasy is like because that game doesn't allow add-ons, but all of the top teams use them anyway. They also can't regulate them, so like you can do basically an infinite amount of things, but at least when they're regulated here, you don't run into things like that.
Yeah, I mean, you already can't do that with world markers, right? You have to place them manually. You can't have them like pre-placed at XY coordinates.
Yeah.
Yeah, WoW's really good
Yeah.
at preventing add-ons and weak auras from doing things they don't want them to do.
Yeah, for sure.
Most of the time.
Yeah, definitely on Neltharion. God, it is so ironic that Neltharion was like, this is the private aura boss. And then it's just like,
I don't know what you're talking about, man.
Holy
Forgotten
shit.
Experiments was the private or boss.
I mean, it did actually serve
Like,
like,
the charges, right?
well, on
Yeah, just the charge.
so Forgotten Experiments was some irrelevant ass easy boss, but like it did accomplish what they wanted. Like there were 3 markers to go stand on, I guess, but nothing was telling you to do that. You just had to look at the other people and go to the one that made sense. and that has to be exactly what they're going for, and it just totally fell off the rails there.
Yeah, but it's just like, just that.
Oh, so how do you guys feel about release timing for the next raid
Wait, did they say?
season? Have you guys? Well, they haven't said, but like, time frame would put it late October in November, and I have like a Doom scenario, or late October, early November, and I mean, that's what time it would be. If you basically did the time frame from season 1 to season 2, and you just applied that to the beginning of season 2, that is when season 3 would come out. Dude, I have a very bad feeling that it'll be something close to BlizzCon, like where if you really cared about the patch, you wouldn't end up going, which is like so sad. I really hope that doesn't happen.
If it's like right after BlizzCon,
I think that's fine. I'm talking.
Yeah, I think that would be fine.
I'm talking. It comes out. This patch comes out Tuesday before BlizzCon, and the raid comes out the Tuesday after BlizzCon.
I don't, dude. There's no way they would do that, right? Like,
Has that ever happened?
I sure fucking hope not. That is like what I think about that like at least once a week.
yeah, that's
That doesn't
like
matter to me personally.
Cancel.
I think that has
I hope
happened
not,
before,
because I already
right?
booked a ticket.
What'd you say,
Yeah.
Goop?
I think that has happened before, right? Some raid in Legion, if I remember correctly, came out like the weekend after a BlizzCon.
All I'm saying is
I
Blizzard
have
has a
to
lot of
look
IP. I don't think they would specifically try to dodge a retail season if they can.
They're usually good about having it not overlap with anything, like a D4 season
I
or
don't go to
or
any of
D3
these
season.
things.
True, same THD.
Dude, THD's actually he can always say he's the biggest gamer. Like after Race World First, we always like go out and do all kinds of shit. People go to the zoo, go to Top Golf, go to bars and stuff. And THD always is like vehemently like, no, I'm not going. And you get back at like 2 in the morning and he's just fucking grinding dungeons still at his computer. What an absolute beast.
Well, yeah, the only reason I went to the bowling alley is because you guys canceled the
Dude.
dinner, so I was hungry as fuck.
Goop,
so
were
I
you at the
needed
bowling
food.
alley?
Yeah.
Did you see how mad he looked? He was like a kid. Okay, he was like a kid who got like dragged out to some venue they didn't want to go to, so they were very passive aggressively
hate that.
showing
He also
showing
wouldn't
their
put his book bag down.
yeah. He was like showing his parents visually how displeased he is that he's not at home, but he was just doing that to us. Like if you went and asked him how he was
Well,
doing,
why do
he's
you
like,
think my parents don't take me anywhere after I was like 14?
I don't know. I guess maybe they didn't want to deal with it.
You figured it
Are
out.
you trying to
didn't
say you're
Yeah.
right? Like you're right in doing
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, because I don't want to go anywhere. Yeah, very
Yeah.
simple.
Okay, but that is an easy strat though. Like I use that one too. If you act like a complete bitch, they don't want to take you out, so you can just stay home and game.
Yeah, that. Wow.
It works.
yeah, if you do it a couple times in a row,
And
people will
confirm
just
it
stop
works.
asking. It's really good.
Yeah, like whenever they brought me to like a birthday party, got my headset, fell asleep on a chair somewhere.
What?
Yep.
What are you talking about?
Every
I've never
single
been
time
to a
they took
birthday
me to
party.
any party, they took me to like some sort of marriage, bro. I just fucking got my headset, went to bed somewhere right there. Took me to like some fucking funeral, just wore a t-shirt and jeans, went to bed. Like I don't.
What?
I'm
Wait,
not there to
wait, you
fucking have a
you
good-
slept at the event with your
Yeah, of
headset
course.
on?
Yeah. of
Why did you
course.
bring your headset?
Well, so I didn't have to hear anyone.
Bro, you're actually not real. You are who that lady saw on that plane in the back.
There's a line where you can be correct, and that is not the line.
And so like the thing is, right? As soon as we're done, I've already woken up. I took a nice nap. I'm ready to go.
Dude.
I mean, in school, I like when I was like in high school and stuff, I didn't go to sleep like during like normal time. I only went to sleep during school pretty much.
At least THD is 100% himself, you know? He's not being extra at all. He just knows who he is. I mean, he has like his stepdad is a witch doctor, like a real witch doctor, and he has multiple skulls in his room, and then he like mains a warlock. Like it's the most lore accurate thing ever.
I mean, he makes totems and cuts chickens' heads off in the night.
Amen. All right, so yeah, this is definitely over now. So yeah, good talk, everybody. It was good to get that all out of our I mean, it seems like seems like we're all in the like augmentation needs to be nerfed, and most of us think it'll be fine. And then THD represents certainly a group of people that are just they're gonna fucking scream and flail until Blizzard gets that they really fucking hate it. Like they don't really like it at all, which makes sense.
I mean, either way, like, I think it's gonna be a problem for a while now.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Last
Either
thing,
they need to
THD,
add more.
What's up?
would you still hate it if logs and details were 100% accurate every single time
Yes.
and showed your correct damage?
Yes, I would.
You would still hate it if details showed you correct damage. Like you had no way of knowing what they were giving you.
Yeah, because I'm not self-reliant.
I feel like a lot of people, or a certain amount of people, would be with you before that, but I would say that most people who are on THD side would probably have the opposite answer of what he just said. I think for THD, the self-reliant thing, I get it, but I think most people, if you made it work 100% accurate on details, they would not give a fuck. It's just on them at that point, right?
Do you have PI in the raid THD?
I don't care to fucking harass them for PI and farm.
Yeah, he actually frequently
pretty
does not
based.
get PI'd.
Base.
That's based.
Yeah, PI and farm is pretty... I think PI on farm is...
The only time I requested it was this raid when we had to 19-man that Sarkareth.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I think in progression... I think it's interesting if you put it on different people at different parts of the fight, and it's like a problem to solve. Like that's not what I think. I think in farm that is completely non-existent, and it's just annoying. It's like the people who get it are the people who like whisper the healers the most. Like fucking if you guys have a pod run your guild, like they just only like they just want it so bad, which means you don't get it, and then it's like you don't even care that you're not getting it, but it's annoying that person's only getting it because they're like crying about it. You know, there's like all kinds of politics that it goes with that, but
Yeah.
I think on progression it's fine.
Dude, now that I think about it, PI is kind of like loot politics in guilds.
True. It's crazy how PI ends up going to the officers more often than not. That's crazy.
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
This
what
was another
happens.
thing that they said too. This was actually in a written interview. Someone said, or they asked, oh fuck, who was this? Wowhead. Wowhead had an interview with them, and they like kind of talked about the PI external buff thing, and they're like, we don't tune, demon hunters based on them having chaos brand, right? Which makes perfect sense. Like it would be stupid as fuck if in a raid demon hunters did like fucking 70% of a DPS's damage, so their buff made the most sense. Like that just doesn't make sense. But then he used the same argument for PI. He was like, yeah, we don't tune things around Chaos Brand and Power Infusion, but that's very, you have to tune Shadow Priest around Power Infusion. And then I looked at logs and they did, because I was looking at like some Rashok single target log, and if you add the average value of
Shadow
PI
Priest
to
is
Shadow,
bottom.
yeah, they're bottom.
Yeah, I mean,
they're bottom, but they have
definitely
to be
for raid, but I mean, that's the always tune around raid.
Yeah, in raid, yeah. So I looked at like a raid statistic thing. I can maybe even pull it up now, where it's like you look at like a pure single target fight, no AoE, and you look at like decently high percentile. Shadow Priest is like third from the bottom, but if you add PI to their number, like a good PI, they're like top 3, top 4.
I'm pretty sure they look at PI as a mistake because they obviously didn't give augmentation haste buff. they did not give them that because they don't want the hassle of dealing with.
I don't think that's true. I think Blizzard
Really?
fucking loves. I actually think they said that as well in some other. This is like a community council interview the other day.
I'm
They're
pretty
like,
sure someone asked them.
They
about
mentioned something-
specifically PI with augmentation like haste buffs.
well, they mentioned PI, and he was like, I think it's really cool that like you can just make your friend have a ton of haste. They like said something like that, and they specifically mentioned haste.
I think what they did with Augmentation THD was they avoided giving them haste buffs so that the damage was like easier to.
Yeah, THD's
calculate,
saying
I
that too.
guess.
So THD's saying that like he thinks that PI, they wish they would have done that with PI. But if they wish they would have done that with PI, they would just change PI. To make PI a 25% damage increase or whatever the fuck, right? Like that, just something like that, or a flat amount of verse. But they don't do that. I don't think Blizzard cares nearly as much about the log thing as like the very loud portion of the community does. I think it's just that simple.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're right not to. I don't know. Like that's never been my problem with PI either. My problem with PI is just the random specs getting shot because they're the PI spec, and then you're just in a raid and you're not getting a PI and you're getting
that's
shot
just-
anyway.
Yeah,
problem.
dude, I heard
Yeah.
that. Okay, so that has been a thing. There have been classes. Actually, Goop, you disagreed with me earlier, right? You thought that classes haven't been nerfed because of PI?
Well, you were saying that they got nerfed and then just didn't get the PI anymore. I was disagreeing specifically with that. Like, Demo probably got nerfed because it was too good with PI specifically, but they didn't stop getting PI after that. They were still the best PI target. They were still getting it. They were still at the top. They were just less than
Oh, and like season 3 of Shadowlands, I think it was.
one of those seasons.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, classes being balanced around PI definitely.
well,
Sucks real bad.
yeah. I mean, the worst feeling you could ever have with PI is if this happened. You had PI, your class without PI was like good, but it wasn't amazing. But with PI, it scaled insane. You got nerfed because of you doing so much damage with PI, and then you lose PI and get nerfed at the same time, and feel like your class just got gutted.
So what about the other one where they remove your personal cooldown because of PI?
Huh?
Yep. And what's up, bro? How's it going?
What are you talking
Oh,
about?
yeah, one of the Warlocks Dark Souls was just PI, and they removed Dark
They
Souls.
removed all of them. They removed every
You
single
think
one.
that was because of PI?
Yeah, they don't like multiplicative stat buffs.
That's kind of a reach, I think.
No, they do not like multiplicative
Like
stat
they
buffs.
said that. They said like,
Yes.
well, okay. Maybe I believe you. You're probably right, but see that's what someone said today. Is like when a lot of the dooming happened today about Evoker, people were saying like, oh, Evokers are gonna get DKs nerfed because of that YouTube video, and I don't know, but when I think that's ludicrous. Like, there's no way.
That's a reach.
Like, that's like, bro, like clearly DKs are not the issue with that fucking raid comp. There's 2 DKs and fucking 20 Evokers. Like,
If you
clearly.
read the Wildhead comments, they're like, yeah, Evoker's kind of a problem, but the big problem is all these classes doing insane bursts in a short window.
I mean, everyone
And then
always
it
comes up with
scales
an
with,
excuse for
like,
like
Breath Beyond and
reason
stuff.
why your class is OP currently. Like Fire Mage, for example, is number 1 too.
Well,
People
almost
like, oh, it's only
almost everyone's take you're gonna see is there's not a lot of people who like try to look at every class equally. Almost everyone is going to be a little bit biased towards their main spec at the least. And also, when you hear complaints, you're going to be more likely to hear complaints than positive things, especially in gaming, but also just in general, like the whole Yelp review thing we were talking about earlier. So you're always going to see an insane amount of negativity with that because, it's always like, oh, not my class, then all those people reach out. But the people who are like, oh, that's fine, they're just not going to type anything because why would you?
And repeat with me, because they are NPCs.
Did you say repeat with me? Like we were all going to join in and just
That's
fucking
right.
say it with you?
Because they are NPCs. That's why they don't type.
Yeah, fucking, they're not even real. All right, this is definitely the end though. I gotta go do some shit. Thanks for the conversation, everybody.
all right.
GG.
Yeah, see ya.
Well,
Yeah, nice.
That was good talk. GG.
Bye bye.